In the Yamen, a booming voice rang out in a sneer. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor coerces the Emperor in order to command the various sects. You have all suffered for long. Dike River County Magistrate Gao Jude acted as an accomplice and was willing to become the eyes and ears of Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, therefore even his death couldn't wipe out his crimes. In the end, Qin Mu frowned. The Dike River County Magistrate died so fast? I'm really unlucky to encounter such a situation after leaving Great Ruins for the first time. Granny is right, the people outside are really fiercer than Great Ruins. The people of our Great Ruins are more simple. Come to think of it, what rank is the Dike River County Magistrate? How's his ability compared to the lower second-ranking prefecture governor? There were 9 grades and 18 ranks in Eternal Peace Empire's official positions. These official rankings were granted according to status and cultivation. Some cult masters or sect leaders have extremely high cultivation, therefore, they were conferred as high officials, while those who had lower cultivation were conferred as local officials. There were also some who were conferred as governors of various regions and counties. For example, Mu Beifeng of Li River Sword Sect was the finest strong practitioner in the southern border, therefore, he was conferred as a lower second-ranking prefecture governor who was extremely powerful. Hu Linger sobered up and quickly executed her spell. The demon wind whirled out from the window while Qin Mu raised his hand and threw a cushion into the air. With the demon wind blowing on the cushion, Hu Linger immediately leaped up onto the cushion and asked bewilderedly, "Young master, even if they are rebelling, they won't go as far as to massacre the commoners in the entire city, right? They shouldn't be a threat to us." Qin Mu jumped out of the window, and before he could land on the ground, a gust of demon wind came blowing over, and the youth immediately stepped on the demon wind to rapidly sprint out of the city. My sword is Junior Protector Sword, which is the sword of a lower first-ranking high official of the imperial family. If discovered by these rebelling people, we are definitely going to die. Furthermore, a man won't stand beside a collapsing wall. These rebelling people will definitely not allow the commoners in the city to leave, therefore we'll only be trapped if we stay here. When the great army of Eternal Peace Empire arrives, how many people will still be alive in the city? Corpse Immortal Cult seems to use corpses to cultivate. Hu Linger gave an uncontrollable shiver. Qin Mu's last sentence was simply too terrifying. Corpse Immortal Cult used corpses to cultivate, which also meant if the army of Eternal Peace Empire came forth to pacify this rebellion, the commoners in the city would probably be refined into flying zombies by the Corpse Immortal Cult, regardless of their identities or statuses. At this moment, Dike River County was already in a great mess as battle cries sounded out everywhere. Corpse Immortal Cult came prepared this time. They first dumped the flying zombies that they had refined to block the dam of Dike River County, and then divided up their forces to infiltrate into the city. When night came, the cult master of Corpse Immortal Cult attacked the Yamen first to kill the magistrate. Even though the magistrate of Dike River County was also an expert and had extraordinary divine arts, he could only give up his head when he got raided. At the same time, the other experts of Corpse Immortal Cult rushed to the 4 city gates to intercept and kill the soldiers in County City, while the cult master brought the rest to kill officials like the county deputy, the county military officer, and the official registrar, so that the soldiers would have no one to lead them. Even though there were still experts in Dike River County, there was no one to give commands, and each fought his own battle. On the other hand, Corpse Immortal Sect used the yellow joss papers to line up a formation and constructed pathways that led everywhere in the sky. Their people in different locations could provide support to each other, therefore Corpse Immortal Cult was bound to emerge victorious in this massacre. Cult Master has ordered to lock down the entire city and let no one leave. A shout came from the center of the city. Qin Mu had the foresight to leave early. With Hu Linger executing Demon Wind and Qin Mu stepping on the wind, just as the human and the fox was about to fly out of the county, sword screeches suddenly sounded out. Qin Mu even didn't look back while his fish dragon spat out Junior Protector Sword, which flew into the sky and thrust backward. Ding! A crisp sound traveled out, and the flying sword, which was thrust towards Qin Mu's back, was deflected away. The speed of the momentum of Junior Protector Sword wasn't reduced as it flew along the vital chi thread and stabbed that person's chest, nailing the black-clothed man, who was stepping on yellow joss papers, to a flagpole. The disciple from Corpse Immortal Cult ambushed him from his back, but since childhood, he had learned sound localization from blind. The direction where the sword came from, The location where the person was standing couldn't escape from his ears. As that person gave a lethal blow ruthlessly, it was almost conditioned reflex that Qin countered it by stabbing the opponent with Junior Protector sword. It was a habit he had cultivated since childhood. The demon wind brought the human and the fox out of the city when a voice cried out, "Senior brother He-in, someone has escaped from the city and even killed little junior brother?" Little junior brother? An astonished and furious voice sounded from the center of the city. "What are you people doing? How could you let little junior brother put himself in danger? How am I supposed to explain this to Cult Master? Guard the city, I'll go kill him." Qin stopped in his steps and the demon wind instantly scattered. Hulinger abandoned the cushion in the sky and leaped onto the backpack on Qin back before tunneling in. Little junior brother? Could he be the son of the cult master of Corpse Immortal Cult? Qin landed on the ground and immediately sprinted away while thinking to himself, he could also be just a normal disciple. Hulinger's demon wind may be convenient, but its speed couldn't match the speed of Qin sprint. Furthermore, it was harder to hide one's track in the sky, whereas one could make use of the cover of the mountains and forests by sprinting on the ground, making it harder for enemies to catch up. Suddenly, flames rose into the sky and transformed into firebirds flying in the sky, lighting up the sky in a snow-white light. This was a divine art executed by a divine arts practitioner. Qin raised his head and the firebirds flying past. Behind the firebirds were yellow joss papers fluttering over as they laid out in the sky. These yellow joss papers were long rectangular strips of paper that were as big as feet, which allowed people to walk on them. Heaven's eyes awaken. The vital chi formation markings revolved around Qin pupils as his heaven's eyes awakened. Looking back, he could see flying zombies stepping on the yellow joss papers and hopping through the sky. The yellow joss papers split into two paths and the flying zombies also split into two groups. As more and more yellow joss papers appeared in the sky, they split into four paths and the flying zombies also split into four groups to search everywhere. Behind the yellow joss papers, a young Taoist carried a long sword case on his back. With the sword case opened, yellow joss papers flew out from inside and laid out continuously in the sky. This must be the senior brother He-in that was mentioned by the Corpse Immortal Cult's disciple. He stepped on the yellow joss paper as he walked in the sky. As he lifted his feet, the yellow joss papers would fly up and return to the sword case. Meanwhile, there were new yellow joss papers flying out from sword case, which would appear in front of him in the exact places where he would step on. The reason why every yellow joss paper had to return to the sword case should be because that every time the yellow joss paper was used, the vital chi in it would be depleted, and it was required to return to the sword case to replenish vital chi. He walked forward but his speed was slow. Qin heart sunk slightly. This was a divine arts practitioner that had opened his 6 directions divine treasure, and it was difficult for him to escape from his pursuit. There was a 5 elements realm and a 5 elements divine treasure between 6 directions realm and spirit embryo. Qin had been cultivating diligently for the past 3 years, and not long ago his spirit embryo had just awakened a 4th time. He had already reached the level of perfect spirit embryo realm, yet he was still unable to touch the 5-element divine treasure. There was a difference of 2 realms between him and He-in who was in the sky. Those were 2 huge gaps that he could never exceed. From the various methods He-in had exhibited, he should be a vermilion bird spirit body and cultivated fire-related divine arts. The sword case on his back showed that he cultivated sword skills. From the yellow joss papers that came spewing out from the sword case, he should be controlling the yellow joss papers by sword skills. The yellow joss papers flew out and came back methodically to maintain the several flying corpses as well as the young Taoist traveling in the sky. This showed that his sword skill was extremely remarkable. In addition, these yellow joss papers weren't only as simple as maintaining them to fly in the sky. On the yellow joss papers were Taoist incantations which were written on using cinnabar and blood. Therefore, the power of every piece of paper would definitely not be weak. If I still had the rule eyes imprint from Grandpa Ma or 9 Heavens God eyes from Grandpa Blind, I would have the confidence to fight with him. However, suddenly a flying zombie bent over and came down to chase after him. With Qin frantically running forward, more and more flying zombies came chasing after him continuously. These flying zombies couldn't really fly. The yellow joss papers from He-in came flying continuously and landed under their feet to support them. This allowed the zombies to walk and even sprint or fight in the sky, therefore they looked like zombies that could fly. As these flying zombies landed on the ground, they actually sprinted forcefully and had an astonishing speed which was even faster than martial arts practitioners. Hu Linger popped her head out from the backpack and gave a blow which instantly raised demon wind. In the demon wind, formless wind blades were thrown towards the flying zombies. Clank, 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 clank. A series of collision sounds rang out and Hu Linger jumped in shock. The flying zombie had an incomparably hard body, rendering her spells completely useless. Qin Mu frowned. The flying zombies' bodies were incomparably hard, and even much stronger than him. They were practically equivalent to human-shaped spirit weapons. He promptly made the decision to execute Secrets of Moving Rain, and the clouds began to gather in the sky, followed by the pattering rain. Linger, assist with your wind. Understanding what he meant, Hu Linger immediately cast her spell. Spinning around and waving his hand, the raindrops shot backward and transformed into water swords. At the same time, the violent gust came blowing, which assisted the rain momentum, instantly giving an exponential boost to the power of Qin Mu's spell as it thrust towards the flying zombies which were sprinting over. The clanging sound of collision rang out. With the two of them acting together, the power of the spell greatly increased as the water swords instantly stabbed through the incomparably hard skin of the flying zombies, turning the 5 flying zombies that were chasing behind them into sieves. However, those flying zombies seemed to have no feeling of pain as they continued to chase over frantically. They didn't avoid anything that was in front of them as they shattered everything in their way. No matter trees or boulders. Since I can't kill you by turning you into sieves, I'll just have to shatter all of you. Qin Mu continuously executing Secrets of Moving Rain, while Hu Linger also continuously executed her gale, wearing out the flying zombies that were chasing behind and even shattering their limbs. At this moment, a firebird which was blazing with raging flames swooped from the back of the flying zombies. As the flames burst forth, raging flames were everywhere in the radius of dozens of yards. With the extremely high temperature, both their spells were totally broken. Qin Mu and Hu Linger both gave a grunt. When their spells were broken, their qi and blood became unstable from the impact of the vital qi bouncing back. You dare to even kill cult leader, son of our corpse immortal cult? Are you seeking for death? He quickly rushed down from the sky and the flying zombies came down from the sky attacking Qin Mu. At the same time, the 5 flying zombies on land also came pouncing forward. It really was the cult leader, son of corpse immortal sect. Qin Mu's face turned black. Isn't this too much of a coincidence? The son of the cult leader just had to attack him and he just had to be so weak that he couldn't even withstand a single stab from him. The corpse immortal cult definitely wouldn't let him go this time. Before the flying zombies in the sky came near to him, he had smelled a fishy smell. It could be obviously seen that the flying corpses were poisonous from their dark green fingernails. It's corpse poison. When Qin Mu smelled the odor, he immediately recognized the toxicity. The medicinal knowledge apothecary had imparted to him included how to identify toxic in medicine by odors. Qin Mu was practically fed with medicine by apothecary ever since he was a child, therefore, he had an extremely high ability to identify toxic in medicine. The fingernails all had corpse poison on them, and if the skin was pierced by them, first the blood will solidify. After that, the muscles would become stiff and as hard as boulder which no weapons could pierce through. Finally, one's consciousness would fade away, and the spirit would disintegrate. Qin Mu sprinted frantically, but the speed of the flying zombies behind him was even faster. The distance between them grew closer and closer. The yellow joss papers continuously laid the path forward as the flying zombies continued to leap repeatedly in the sky, and were about to catch up to them. Behind them, He waved his hand and another firebird came flapping through the sky. Before they could even get close, Qin Mu could already feel the surging heat wave which raised up hot wind. The greenery on the ground became instantly shriveled and was completely dehydrated. This person should have taken 2 approaches and cultivated both spell and sword control. This situation was rare in the past, but with Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor bold and decisive actions to reform the old, he had gathered all the sects in the whole world for the imperial family and broken numerous inherent barriers, lessened the estrangement between different classes. Therefore, the situation of classes converging appeared. Even evil cults like corpse immortal sects also took advantage of this big transformation to improve the techniques and divine arts of their own cult, developing numerous new spells and divine arts. That's not right. It should be 3 different classes. What these flying zombies are exhibiting the moves from the battle technique class. Qin Mu frowned and suddenly increased his foot force. With his body snaking forward like a dragon, he dodged the huge firebird. Unexpectedly, the huge firebird blew up with a boom. The flames exploded and instantly formed a rapidly swelling huge fireball which had a radius of 20 yards. The surging heat wave and blaze ruthlessly smacked Qin Mu away. Before Qin Mu could land on the ground, he saw more yellow joss papers come fluttering over as 8 to 9 flying zombies passed through the flames from the explosion, while stepping on the yellow joss papers to attack him. These flying zombies were all strong martial practitioners of the 5 elements realm. Their bodies were refined as hard as spirit weapons. Their moves were simple and they could only shovel, slice, cut and stab. However, if he was surrounded by them, there was no way he could escape. There were flying zombies chasing him on the land and there were also flying zombies attacking him from the sky. Furthermore, He-In was also attacking him using divine arts. Therefore, the situation was extremely bad to him. The yellow joss papers fluttered and rapidly broke through the air, which giving off screeching sounds. He-In seemed to be controlling the yellow joss papers, but he was actually using sword skills. This kind of sword skill was extremely intricate, and was not any inferior to the sword skill of Li River Sword sect. The most crucial point was that he had a very bad feeling about the Taoist incantations drawn on the yellow joss papers by Cinnabar and Blood. If they were normal papers, they definitely wouldn't have the power of swords, but there were Taoist incantations drawn on them, and the talismans contained a hidden power. As Qin Mu hovered in midair, he gave no explanation and used Heavenly Devil Creation technique to seal his own souls and spirits. After that, he shook out the little fox inside his backpack with his vital qi. With his 10 fingers rapidly poking, he also sealed her souls and spirits inside her body. Hu Linger was embarrassed and angry after getting poked all over by him, and slipped back into the backpack, refusing to come out. Sealing souls and spirits required one to poke the intimate parts of the body. She was still a female fox after all, therefore she was still shy. Qin Mu had no time to care about these matters. The yellow joss papers were paper money that was burned for the deceased, and the talisman drawn onto the yellow joss papers meant that the power of the talisman was most likely aimed at the souls and spirits. If the power of the talisman burst forth when he got into contact with these yellow joss papers, his souls and spirits will probably be injured. Therefore he had sealed his souls and spirits in advance to prevent himself from being caught unprepared from the vicious attacks. Whoosh! The yellow joss papers came spreading down from the sky, and with the yellow joss papers were 8 flying zombies. The yellow joss papers flew past both sides of Qin Mu, allowing the 8 zombies to surround and envelop him from all directions. With his body in midair, Qin Mu started to fall while the 5 tattered flying zombies leaped up from and attacked him. At the same time, the yellow joss papers weaved past the crowd of zombies. Bind! Ian cried out. A yellow joss paper suddenly burst into flames. However, the Taoist incantation written by Cinnabar and Blood didn't vanish and instead grew bigger and bigger as the flames floated in the air, shining on Qin Mu up in the sky. As if he had no feeling, the fish dragon leaped up behind Qin Mu's back and spat out a sword. The arm-thick vital qi of the youth from disabled elderly village burst forth and swept up Junior Protector Sword before giving a horizontal cleave. Cleave sword form. The sword energy broke through the air and the head of a flying zombie came rolling off. He-In, who was currently rushing over, was astonished. The power of the rest of his yellow joss papers burst forth as he tried to bind Qin Mu. The use of his binding talismans was to bind the 3 souls and 7 spirits of a human. If the souls and spirits were bound, the body would be unable to move as well. However, he was puzzled at why the previous binding talisman had not exhibited the effect. The power of the Taoist incantations on the other talismans burst forth and strange Taoist incantations surrounded Qin Mu's front and back. However, Qin Mu wasn't the slightest bound and could still flick his fingers. Junior Protector Sword was changed from cleave sword form into flick sword form, flicking another flying zombie into half. He then followed up with smear sword form, controlling Junior Protector Sword to cut the neck of the 3rd flying zombie in a circular ring. The sword tip of Junior Protector Sword faced outwards and was waved in a full circle, causing the heads of the flying zombies all around to roll off onto the ground. In a blink of an eye, the 8 flying zombies immediately lost their heads and collapsed to the ground. Wave sword form. Qin Mu's sword skill was extremely fast. The simpler the move was, the faster the sword could strike. With the sharpness of Junior Protector Sword, the 8 zombies were all cut down before they could even attack him. He had a pained expression. It was very easy to use flying zombies to surround strong practitioners of battle techniques or spells, but against sword cultivators like Qin Mu, it would be slightly difficult. Especially so when the sword of the sword cultivator was incomparably sharp. It was practically specialized in countering his flying zombies. He used the corpse breeding ground to create his flying zombies. The durability of the flying zombies' bodies was extremely high, and they couldn't be hurt by normal spirit weapons. Furthermore, the flying zombies had no souls and spirits, therefore, spells that were targeted at souls and spirits were not useful as well. Qin Mu's horizontal cleave seemed normal and ordinary, but when the heads rolled down with just a raise of his hand, it meant that this sword was definitely surpassed most of the treasures among the spirit weapons. He hurriedly stopped and called back the 5 zombies below Qin Mu, while sending the yellow joss papers in the sword case to slice towards Qin Mu. Qin Mu took the chance to land on the ground and faced He while moving backward. He executed Heaven Pilfering leg skill, which Cripple had taught him to sprint, so even when he was running backward, his sprinting speed was no less slow. Qi. Sword light flashed as Qin Mu used Qi to manipulate the sword to stab at the yellow joss papers flying over. Boom! Violent explosions traveled over when his Junior Protector Sword contacted the first yellow joss paper. The Taoist incantation on the paper suddenly exploded, and the burst of power instantly detonated the other Taoist incantations on the other papers. A series of explosions traveled out and Qin Mu suffered the impact of airwaves. With huge tremors to his chest, the air in his lungs was nearly squeezed out as he flew backward uncontrollably. Flying dozens of yards away, Hu Linger in his backpack hurriedly executed her spells to raise a gale to cancel out the terrifying impact. Only then did Qin Mu manage to stop. However, the vital qi that was connected to Junior Protector Sword was also shattered by the explosions, causing Junior Protector Sword to whiz away and fall into the darkness. Qin Mu landed on the ground and took a deep breath before giving 2 violent coughs. Despite being prepared, his lungs were still damaged by the explosions. This was simply because he had worn the 100 Venom golden silk-made clothes. If he didn't have this set of outfit, he would probably have died from this explosion. He's actually still alive? He took out a jar of fishy-smelling ointment and threw to one of the flying zombies before flying towards Qin Mu immediately. Flame divine arts were hidden in his yellow joss papers, which could be used to slice opponents and could also explode. Apart from the explosions damaging the flesh body, the greatest damage was from the thunderclaps created from the explosions. If one faced the impact of the thunderclaps head-on, their 3 souls and 7 spirits would be shaken out of their bodies and disintegrate among the explosion. It was really out of his expectation that Qin Mu could actually defend against the explosions, and also the thunderclaps, which could destroy the 3 souls and 7 spirits. However, it was nothing even if he had defended against that attack. Now that his extremely sharp treasure sword had gone missing after getting blown away, and with the injuries from the explosions, only death awaited Qin Mu. Instead of retreating, Qin Mu advanced and untied the sword sheath. He actually used his ability to use qi to manipulate the sword sheath like a treasure sword to stab it at He. At the same time, his footsteps flickered indefinitely like a phantom as he closed in on He. He sneered and his vital qi burst forth into firebirds which swooped towards Qin Mu. At the same time, the yellow joss papers fluttered out from the sword case on his back and slashed it at Qin Mu. Qin Mu's footsteps became increasingly swift, and with a sudden shout, he thrust his fingers at him. Stab sword form. The sword sheath whizzed toward He and he sneered as a yellow joss paper flew out from his sword case and faced the sword sheath head-on. Even though the power of Qin Mu's stab was not small, the opening of the sword sheath was facing towards him. Without using the pointier end of the sword sheath, even if it struck him, it won't deal much damage to him. He only needed to detonate 1 Taoist incantation, and he would be able to block this attack from Qin Mu and blew the sword sheath away. Right at this moment, the opening of the sword sheath suddenly transformed into a fish dragon, opening its huge mouth pouncing over. Being startled in his heart, He immediately heard the sound of something breaking through the air behind him. The Junior Protector Sword, which was blasted away, actually whizzed back and came stabbing at the back of his heart. He immediately moved his body and wanted to avoid Junior Protector Sword, and the fish dragon transformed by the sword sheath. However, a small furry head popped out from Qin Mu's backpack and spat out a whirlwind to bind his body in place for that instant. As he broke free from the whirlwind, he felt a cold sensation from the back of his shoulder. Junior Protector Sword stabbed into his shoulder blade and penetrated through it, while bringing an arrow of blood into the fish dragon's mouth. Just as Qin Mu succeeded in his attack and wanted to chase, the blazing flames from the firebird engulfed him, which was followed by Yellow Joss Paper's flying eye. To the flames. Boom! Violent tremors traveled out and Qin Mu flew backward while being covered in blood. His vital qi swept Junior Protector Sword as he crashed into the forest. He quickly leaped up and disappeared into the darkness. He flew into a fury and wanted to give chase, but a sharp pain came from his shoulder. When Qin Mu used the sword sheath to recall Junior Protector Sword, the power of that stab wasn't strong, but because the Junior Protector Sword was too sharp, it still managed to penetrate through his shoulder bone and created a huge hole in his shoulder. He endured the pain and took out jade bottles, big and small. He first applied medicine which could stop bleeding before applying medicines that could treat broken bones and also regenerate flesh. However, the sharp pain was very unbearable. Meanwhile, a flying zombie behind him took out ointment from the medicine jar and smeared it on the neck of a flying zombie which Qin Mu had beheaded. The zombie then grabbed the flying zombie's head and placed it back on the neck which had been smeared with medicine. The flying zombie's head swayed and gave a few cracks. However, his head had been assembled backward, therefore he was facing the back. The flying zombie which had treated him seemed to be oblivious and walked towards the flying zombie which had been split in half. He pieced the body back together and smeared the fishy ointment on it. These flying zombies were either beheaded or split into half, yet they still couldn't die. As long as the ointment from Corpse Immortal Cult was smeared on the limbs would be reattached and they could still leap and frisk about. It was truly a surprising sight. Corpse Immortal Cult, which was used to creating corpses, sure had their unique points. Suddenly the sound of breaking through the air sounded out. Disciples of Corpse Immortal Cult quickly rushed to He Yin's side, and one of the female disciples asked in astonishment, "Senior brother He Yin, you're hurt? Is that brat very strong?" "No." He Yin replied with a grim expression and gritted his teeth. "He is at most at 5 elements realm, but his cultivation isn't bad. Furthermore, he has a very strange body technique, and is skilled in sword control techniques as well as spells. He had a treasure sword which could be recalled back with his sword sheath, and this sword is extremely sharp. So sharp that even my flying zombies can't defend against it. His injuries shouldn't be light as well. He shouldn't have escaped too far." Most of the disciples of Corpse Immortal Cult were astonished. The female disciple replied, "Since he is good in sword control technique and spells, he must be lacking in battle technique. Let us give chase and capture him to hand over to cult leader to deal with." More than a dozen disciples of the Corpse Immortal Cult left hastily. He Yin rose and also wanted to head over when a figure suddenly flew over. He Yin saw the face of this person and got startled. He immediately bowed and greeted, "Senior Uncle Chow." That Senior Uncle Chow frowned. "Not only have you not yet caught the brat that killed cult leader's son, you are instead injured by him. He Yin, you are really something." He Yin was embarrassed and asked, "Senior Uncle Chow, cult leader." Cult leader has already known and is extremely angry. However, he's still stabilizing the situation and quelling the riots in the city. Senior Uncle Chow continued, "Now that Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor had suffered grave injuries, there are no heroes that wouldn't take this chance to stir havoc and slay the clique of traitors in order to correct the laws and discipline of the Imperial Court. This time our Corpse Immortal Cult has sufficient reason to send forces to clip off Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's wings and take over Dyke River County City. Now that Dyke River County is under our Corpse Immortal Cult's power, its foundation must be stabilized so that we can catch the remaining clique of Imperial Preceptor in one fell swoop. Cult leader may be devastated, but he still prioritizes the general situation first." He Yin understood and replied, "May I ask Senior Uncle Chow to follow those few junior brothers and junior sisters? That person may not be old, but he has a sharp sword that could transform into a fish dragon." Senior Uncle Chow was astonished. A sharp sword that could transform into a fish dragon? What is the specific shape? Tell me in detail. He described Junior Protector Sword and the strange sword sheath, causing Senior Uncle Chow to be greatly shocked and cried out, "This is the treasure sword of a first-ranking high official in the imperial family, a first-class treasure in the world. Even our corpse immortal cult doesn't have such a powerful treasure. How could such an important treasure appear in the hands of this youth? Could he be the heir to one of the first-ranking high official in the imperial family?" His gaze flickered and smiled. "This sword is remarkable. The heavens must be wanting our cult to prosper by sending us a first-ranking treasure sword. I shall go and plunder the sword." Once he was finished, he disappeared in a flash. He frowned as he thought to himself, "Treasure sword of a first-ranking high official? This is a treasure which symbolizes one's position in the imperial family. How would a first-ranking high official hand the imperial family's treasure sword to their own heir? Senior Uncle Chow is not thinking this through. I should still quickly report this to cult leader." He immediately headed back to Dike River County City. Senior Uncle Chow followed the trails left behind by Qin Mu and Corpse Immortal Cult's disciples and searched his way over. Suddenly he frowned slightly when he saw the first corpse. The corpse of a Corpse Immortal Cult's disciple. There was a bloody streak across the neck of the Corpse Immortal Cult's disciple. Other than that, there were no other injuries on his body, and there were no bloodstains at his side either. From the wound, he should have been stabbed in the throat by the sword's tip, which sliced open the two biggest blood vessels in his throat. From the angle of the wound, this Corpse Immortal Cult's disciple should have been traveling on the yellow joss papers and got assassinated from the back. Before he could react, his throat had already been cut by the treasure sword. However, what's strange was that there were no bloodstains in the surroundings. Senior Uncle Chow frowned. This meant that this disciple didn't die here. He was disposed here after traveling in the air for some time. His blood had already been drained while he was in the air. What did this mean? It meant that the youth that had killed him was standing right behind him. This disciple should have been rushing forward while traveling on the yellow joss papers to search for traces of Qin Mu. Meanwhile, the youth had silently appeared behind him and sliced his throat in a single blade. The youth then kept close to him and controlled his sword case, so that the yellow joss papers would continue to fly forward and pave the way. At the same time, this youth controlled the corpse of the Corpse Immortal Cult's disciple to move forward continuously, making it look like he was alive as he caught up to the rest of the Corpse Immortal Cult's disciples. This is the art of corpse control. The expression of Senior Uncle Chow changed slightly. This youth also understands how to control corpses. The disciples of our cult are in danger. However, come to think of it, there should be no first-ranking high official in the imperial family who is skilled at corpse control. Where is this youth from? Where did he learn the skills of corpse control? Now it was late at night and was almost reaching the third period of the night watch. Even though there was still moonlight, one couldn't see clearly or see too far ahead. Senior Uncle Chow could imagine how Qin Mu took advantage of the night to control the corpse of the Corpse Immortal Cult's disciple. This way he could get closer to the other Corpse Immortal Cult's disciples without alerting them. When they could finally see clearly, it was probably too late for them to avoid his sword. Other than Corpse Immortal Cult, there were also other evil cults and devil cults which knew the art of corpse control. However, everyone had different skills and techniques. Corpse Immortal Cult could be considered outstanding in the path of corpse control and raising corpses. However, their reputation wasn't too good. From the method of Qin Mu's corpse control, it was very likely to be extremely remarkable. To be able to kill a Corpse Immortal Cult's disciple and control his body afterward to make him look like he was still alive, resulting in the other disciples to be unable to see anything unusual. This kind of corpse control art was extremely rare. It seems to be the great corpse control skill from Heavenly Devil Cult. Senior Uncle Chow continued to give chase, and not long after, he saw the second corpse, followed by the third and the fourth. The corners of his eyes twitched when he saw that the seventh corpse. The seventh corpse had no skin, which must have been stripped. However, even after the skin was stripped, not a drop of blood flew out and there were no bloodstains anywhere. Senior Uncle Chow had a huge change in expression as he let out a murky breath. Heavenly Devil Creation Technique. This youth is a disciple of Heavenly Devil Cult. Now that the corpse was unrecognizable, This means that Qin Mu could be anyone among the disciples that had given chase. A murderous intent flashed through Senior Uncle Chao's eyes as he continued to give chase. Not long later, he met a few disciples of Corpse Immortal cult. These few people had grouped together and looked around cautiously. When they saw his arrival, they all let out sighs of relief. One of the disciples called out, "Senior Uncle Chao." Senior Uncle Chao flicked his fingers and fine needles that were as thin as cow hair shot into the hearts of the brows of these disciples in a flash. Their gaze instantly turned lifeless as their souls and spirits rapidly disintegrated, while they vomited out white foam. These needles were Senior Uncle Chao's spirit weapon, which he called corpse-killing needles. As long as one got hit by the needles, his souls and spirits would disintegrate and become a walking corpse that had no soul left. Even the greatest gods and immortals wouldn't be able to save them. A female disciple stuttered, Senior Uncle Chao, W. Senior Uncle Chu traveled over quickly and checked the bodies of these few disciples. He then frowned slightly. He did not find Qin Mu. If Qin Mu had used Heavenly Devil creation technique from Heavenly Devil cult to strip the skin and transformed into the appearance of a disciple of Corpse Immortal cult, there should be a red line on his skin, but there was no red line on the bodies of these disciples. This meant that Qin Mu wasn't among them. Crap, I've fallen into his trap. I've killed the wrong people. The corners of Senior Uncle Chao's eyes twitched as he looked at the bodies of the Corpse Immortal cult's disciples and calculated silently. If I leave their corpses as they are, I'm afraid cult leader and the other old fogies would perceive something. It's still better to get rid of the bodies. Flicking his nails, the powder hidden in his nails flew out and landed on the bodies. The flesh and blood of the Corpse Immortal cult's disciples instantly melted. Even the bones and the clothes on their bodies also melted and turned into a puddle of pus. Senior Uncle Chao gave a sigh of relief and squinted his eyes to look at his surroundings. He didn't find any traces of Qin Mu. Suddenly his body trembled, and with a whoosh, countless of red dots flew down from his Taoist robes. They were thousands and thousands of corpse beetles. The corpse beetles vibrated their wings and flew off in all directions. As the moonlight sets in the west, the east was suffused in white. As the swarm of red-colored corpse beetles flew in the sky, they were like fireflies roaming in the wild before the sun rose. A first-ranking high official's treasure sword should be enough to use as a cult legacy's treasure. Senior Uncle Chao raised his head and looked at the red clouds in the east while mumbling. Cult leader has been sitting in the leader position forever, and it's time for him to move his butt. Great ruins, disabled elderly village. Moor, it's time to wake up and eat. Why are you still sleeping? Just as Granny C finished her words, she couldn't help turning blank. These few days after Qin Mu had left, she would also make an extra portion when cooking and called Qin Mu over to have his meal. She would always forget that Qin Mu had left the village. Granny C sighed and finished her breakfast alone and in silence. Putting the bowls and pots aside, she didn't wash them and just sat at the table, lost in her thoughts. Suddenly the little old woman stood up and went into her room to pack up her stuff. Carrying her basket, she walked out of her house with tiny steps and headed out of the village. At the village entrance, apothecary and village chief were still drinking tea, sitting around leisurely and contented. Granny C paid no attention to both of them. Carrying her basket, she continued her walk to exit the village. Old woman C, you want to leave the village? Aren't you going to say something? Village chief asked unhurriedly. Granny C turned around and blinked her eyes innocently. Who is leaving the village? Village chief smiled. I may be a laity, but I also know the intention of a song when I hear one. You haven't been eating and sleeping well for the past few days. Therefore you naturally couldn't stay here any longer and definitely want to go find Moor. Annoyed, Granny C retorted. You even saw through this. I'm leaving, not going to stay here anymore. Apothecary gave a cough and said, if you leave the village, who will help you suppress the devil in your heart? Because we are here in the past. The primordial spirit of Cult Masterly dare not be impudent. If you leave, I'm afraid you won't be able to suppress Cult Masterly. Cult Masterly has an extremely deep attainment in the devil path and even transformed into a devil seed before he died, planting himself into your Tao heart, living off your Tao heart, waiting constantly to bite back. If you can't vanquish him or suppress him, he will bite back and obliterate your primordial spirit and take over your body. Granny C's gaze wavered. He will not take over my body. Because he loves you too much? Apothecary sneered. That's where you're wrong. By taking over your body, he will be reborn with your body. That way he would become you. What he loves isn't you but your shell, so when he becomes you, he can love himself. He is the devil in your heart and you are also the devil in his heart. By using your body to be rebirth, he would have conquered the devil in his heart. Cult Master Li is using you to temper himself. He's trying to become God. Granny C shuddered and suddenly smiled. Apothecary, after saying so much, can you help me get rid of this devil in my heart? Apothecary fell silent. The primordial spirit of Li Tianqing had already been planted in Granny C's Dao heart, and he had no way to get rid of it. It was not only him who could not get rid of it, Old Ma with his Buddhist skills couldn't get rid of it as well. Even Village Chief's sword couldn't get rid of the devil in her Dao heart. The only one would get rid of the devil in her heart was Granny C herself. All they could do was to help Granny C suppress the devil in her heart. I've stayed here for over 40 years, so what's the use of me staying on if all of you can't get rid of him? Granny C carried her basket and left without turning her head back. I'm going to find Moore. I'm always worried that he would go hungry and cold or get bullied by others. Don't you worry, if I can't suppress that old devil Li, I'll come back. Village Chief and Apothecary frowned together. Granny C carried her basket and came to the riverside. She summoned a river carrier over and boarded it, sailing downstream. After the river carrier had swum 30 miles downstream, Granny C was suddenly stunned when she saw a blind man walking on the river with his cane. Granny C's face instantly turned black and stretched her hand over to pick this blind man up, putting him on the back of the river carrier. She then asked angrily, "Blind, are you trying to make me stay as well?" Blind stared blankly and smiled. "So it's Granny. I was simply walking, what is it about making you stay?" Granny C was skeptical and asked, "Aren't you trying to stop me and prevent me from leaving the village by running so far ahead early in the morning?" Blind complained, "You walk your path and I walk mine. Why do I need to make you stay?" "That's right, old woman, where are you going? Can I take a lift from you?" Granny C blinked her blurry eyes and smiled. "I'm going to Eternal Peace Empire. Do you want a lift?" Blind clapped his hands. "I'm going to Eternal Peace Empire as well." Granny C stared at him with her eyes wide open. Looking at Blind's innocent face, Granny C sneered. "What are you going to Eternal Peace Empire for?" Blind replied indifferently, "My eyes are blind, so I'm going to find the person who had dug out both of my eyes." Granny C's heart gave a jump. She then smiled. "I thought you were worrying about Moore's safety and planned to go to Eternal Peace Empire to find him. So you were going to take care of your proper business. He has grown up and naturally he would be able to handle all sorts of changes." Blind's words made Granny secretly ashamed until she heard what Blind continued to say. "I'll not find him and will instead observe him from the shadows." At this moment, a shooting light flashed past in the sky, and when Granny C raised her head, the shooting light had already disappeared without a trace. Suddenly that shooting light turned back again and landed on the back of the river carrier with a swoosh. Cripple's figure appeared as he looked resentfully at the two people on the beast's back. Blind grumbled angrily, "Cripple, it's scary to see you running around like a ghost. What are you doing?" "Going out of the village to take a walk." Cripple took a look around and asked, "Have any of you seen Old Ma? I haven't seen him since yesterday. He didn't return last night." Granny C was astonished. "Old Ma didn't return?" "He always returns to the village punctually." Cripple sighed and said, "I reckon he must have also missed Moore and left for Eternal Peace Empire. I'm going to find him. This old fellow left without saying a word and I'm going to question him why. Why did he have to abandon our friendship of many years? I'm also going to take a look at my leg." Blind sneered. "Aren't you thinking of finding Moore?" Cripple retorted coldly, "Me miss him? I wouldn't miss him. He's just a brat that was picked up by us and had been naughty and annoying since he was small. I have long wanted to send him away. A look ahead. That scoundrel in front looks like Butcher. It really is Butcher." A while later, there were 4 people standing on the back of the river carrier. Of course, Butcher was using his hands to stand. The 3 of them looked at one another while Blind propped himself with his bamboo cane and listened. However, no one made a sound. Granny C carried her basket. Cripple propped himself with his cane and whistled. Butcher put down both of his hands and placed them on his hips to look around. After some time, Blind mumbled, "Other than the four of us, Old Ma had also run away, so only Apothecary, Village Chief, Deaf and Mute are left in the village." Mute ran off. Butcher gave a grunt and said, "Before Village Chief and Apothecary woke up, Mute had already run off while carrying a huge chest. I came out to chase him, but I couldn't catch up." Blind was stunned and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. In that case, only Deaf, Village Chief, and Apothecary are left. Cripple chuckled. "We are not missing Moor at all. We all have our own proper businesses to take care of. I'm going to the Imperial Palace to take a look at my leg in case Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor decides to marinate it, grill it and smoke it. It would be bad if he decides to make it into ham." Blind nodded his head. "I also have proper business to take care of. I need to take revenge for my eyes." Granny C also nodded repeatedly and smiled. "As the saintess of the sacred cult of the previous generation, I'll naturally have to meet the new cult master for his ascension to power." Butcher took a while to think of a reason and said, "I think the lower half of my body could have been dropped at some place. I'll need to go and take a look. I might still be able to reattach it." The four of them all gave sighs of relief and spoke in unison. "Therefore we all have proper businesses to take care of." In Disabled Elderly Village, Village Chief and Apothecary sat at the village entrance and drank their tea silently. After some time, Apothecary said, "There are only four of us left in the village." "Apothecary, Old Ma had left yesterday." Village Chief drank his tea and continued, "Their temperament is still poor and they can't sit still. Deaf is still the man of great erudition and scholarship, being able to keep himself calm and comp." He turned his head and stared blankly at Deaf, who walked by them carrying a bamboo basket which was shielded from the sun with a cloth. Apothecary couldn't resist asking, "Deaf, where are you going?" Deaf seemed to not hear what he said and continued walking. "That wretch is pretending not to hear again." Apothecary ranted angrily. "Now there are only two of us left in the village." Village Chief didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He suddenly asked, "When are you leaving?" Apothecary hurriedly shook his head. "How would I dare to leave when I have so many enemies outside? What I'm worried is now that all the baddies have run out, they would probably cause quite a big commotion." "The baddies in our village?" Village Chief smiled. "Let the people outside have a headache. If you want to leave, you can leave too. I'll stay and look after the village and wait for all of you to return." Apothecary hesitated for a moment and shook his head. "I would only cause more trouble if I leave. Among the baddies in our village, my reputation is the worst." Village Chief said with a half smile, "If it wasn't the case, you would have left long ago." The two of them looked at each other and laughed out loudly. At the common border of Dyke River County and Tiger Sun County, Qin Mu raised his head and looked at the morning sun. With vermilion bird vital chi bursting forth from his hand, he burned the clothing he had stole from the corpse immortal cult's disciple. As for the human skin, he had already thrown it away while escaping. He had still some qualms about wearing other people's skin. Furthermore, he was also carrying a huge backpack, and inside were all the scattered items that Granny C had prepared for him. He wouldn't be able to wear the human skin, or else there would be a huge hunch and be easy for people to see through his disguise. What is hidden in Granny C's hunchback? A curious thought emerged in Qin Mu's mind. As he was carrying a backpack, he would become a hunchback if he wore a human skin. Since Granny C wasn't a real hunchback, this meant that there was definitely something hidden inside. Qin Mu was very curious at what strange and rare items would be hidden inside. After a night of escaping, he had no time to rest, and the repeated fierce battles had really exhausted him. Hu Linger was so tired that she had already fallen asleep inside his backpack. A gust blew over and Qin Mu immediately caught up to the cusp of gust to travel on the wind. However, a few steps later, he could feel the exhaustion in his body and could only land back on the ground to walk passively. Suddenly, buzzing sounds came from the sky, and looking towards the source of the sound, Qin Mu saw a few fire-red beetles flying towards him. These beetles seemed not to be afraid of humans as they circled close to him. Corpse beetles! The corners of Qin Mu's eyes twitched as he gave a yawn and mumbled to himself, "I'm so tired. I should find a place to sleep." Giving a few flicks with his fingers, the few beetles instantly exploded into pieces. Qin Mu immediately increased his speed and rushed away. He had once seen this kind of corpse beetle at Apothecary's place. There were green and black corpse beetles, but the red corpse beetles were the hardest to get. These red beetles he saw were indeed the red corpse beetles. And at this moment more buzzing sound came out. Raising his head to have a look, his scalp turned numb when he saw a red cloud heading for him aggressively. That red cloud flew lower and lower. Suddenly the red beetles flew into the forest and tunneled into motley burial mounds. The ground of the motley burial mounds trembled and skeletons crawled out from the ground, came striding to Qin Mu. More corpse beetles flew over and tunneled into the bodies of wild beasts like wild wolves and fierce tigers on their way. The eyes of those wild beasts turned red with fury and actually pounced towards Qin Mu. Expert from Corpse Immortal Cult. He's even stronger than that divine arts practitioner called He-In. He's at least one realm higher than him. Qin Mu's heart trembled violently. These corpse beetles should be raised by the expert of Corpse Immortal Cult. He was able to control so many corpse beetles from such a far range, and use them to control the countless skeletons in the motley burial mounds as well as the various beasts in the wilderness. From this, one could imagine how dense this person's cultivation was. This was much harder than controlling flying zombies. These corpse beetles entered the bodies of the skeletons and the fierce beasts, resulting in their strange transformation. The bones of the skeletons turned red in color while the fierce beasts just turned into red-furred carcasses which chased after Qin Mu frantically. This kind of method was much stronger than He-Yin's. His motive is not to kill me but to delay my escape by using these corpse beetles to control the skeletons and beasts. Qin Mu used his vital qi to control his sword. As Junior Protector Sword flew out, it executed wave sword form and the treasure sword flew continuously in circles around him, creating loops after loops. As he continued to sprint forward, Junior Protector Sword also continuously cut its way forward, slicing the skeletons and red-furred beasts pouncing from front and back into pieces. However, every time a skeleton got shattered and a red-furred beast got sliced into pieces, there were red corpse beetles flying out from their bodies. They would either tunnel into the ground or fly into the distant forest, resulting in a never-ending cycle of corpses tunneling out and red-furred beasts rushing out from the forest. Qin Mu's scalp turned numb. These carcasses and skeletons had delayed his escape. That expert which was chasing him would definitely catch up in a while. Right at this moment, Hu Linger was rudely awakened by the commotion. Seeing the situation, she immediately executed her spell to summon the demon wind. The power of the wind grew larger and larger until it turned into a tornado and swept away all of the red-furred beasts and skeletons that were blocking their way. The pressure on Qin Mu decreased hugely, which increased his speed as he sprinted forward. At this moment, a red corpse beetle flew over and landed on Qin Mu's backpack. It then tried to tunnel into Hu Linger's nose. Hu Linger gave an astonished scream and immediately scrambled out from the backpack and climbed onto Qin Mu's shoulder. More beetles came buzzing over. It was obvious that the expert from Corpse Immortal Cult who was chasing them had discovered that Hu Linger could control the wind, therefore, he had targeted her with the corpse beetles, trying to turn her into a red-furred beast as well. Sunshine refining young soul in the sky. Qin Mu's vital qi transformed into blazing flames as he cast a madra into the sky. The vermilion bird vital qi transformed into a burning sun shooting off its brilliant rays. The corpse beetles squeaked weirdly as green smoke started to emanate from their bodies. All of them landed on the ground and remained motionless. Thunderclap 8 strikes works. It can destroy the souls and spirits of the corpse beetles. Qin Mu was astonished and surprised. He executed Sunshine refining young soul in the sky as he sprinted and green smoke came out from all of the skeletons and carcasses when they got shown by the burning sun. The skeletons clattered to the ground in pieces while the carcasses dropped to the ground. And so the skeletons and carcasses stopped blocking his way and started sprinting with him. As the skeletons sprinted, they suddenly stretched out their hands to pluck off their ribs to use them as curved blades, throwing them at Qin Mu. Hundreds of ribs as thick as huckleberries whizzed past and whirled in the air. The ribs flew in an arc, therefore even if they didn't hit Qin Mu, it would fall back into the skeleton's hands. Qin Mu's head started to ache and he could only execute wave sword form again to block all the curved ribs blades which attacked him from all directions. His speed was once again slowed down. Corpse Immortal Cult's offensive methods were simply strange. They had flying zombies, yellow joss papers, corpse beetles, skeletons, red-furred carcasses, and even skeletons which broke off their ribs to use them as flying blades. It was really fantastic oddities of every description. Suddenly Qin Mu saw a farmland in front and there were farmers farming. It was the season of spring harvest and there were many farmers who had woken up early to harvest their crops. "Run away quickly!" Qin Mu waved his hands and shouted. "Everyone run quickly!" Those farmers raised their heads to take a look and couldn't help being startled. The skeletons and red-furred carcasses swarmed over like flood and looked terrifying. They immediately threw down the sickles in their hands and escaped. However, their speed was way slower than Qin Mu and the red-furred beasts. At this speed, they would definitely be caught up. Qin Mu immediately changed direction and avoided them. However, beside the fields was the official road, and there were passers-by as well. In front was a horse carriage and there were 2 bodyguards riding draft horses. A female voice came from the carriage. "What the commotion outside?" A bodyguard on the horse bowed and replied, "My lord, there is a disaster caused by skeletons which are currently chasing a youth in embroidered clothes." The youth was worried they would collide with the farmers in the field, so he had lured the skeletons to horde onto the official road. There are also red-furred beasts and they looked very strange. They should have been controlled by someone with corpse beetles. It's mostly like corpse immortal cult from Xiangxi. Now that the world is starting to be peaceful, there will always be demons and monsters coming out to create havoc. The woman in the carriage commanded, "Bodyguard, sure, go and get rid of the skeleton horde and red-furred beasts. Don't drag the commoners into the fray." "Yes, my lord." The bodyguard didn't get off the horse and instead took out a silver sword pellet. With a flick of his finger, his sword pellet flew into the sky and whirled in the sky. With every spin there would be a snow-white sword light shooting out. That sword pellet whirled at an extremely fast speed and sword lights came shooting down like rain. When Qin Mu was running, he could only hear a whooshing sound as the skeletons sprinting behind him shattered into pieces and turned into powder. Meanwhile, the red-furred beasts were beheaded. In not even a breath's time, the hundreds of skeletons and red-furred beasts that were chasing him were all annihilated. Red corpse beetles flew out from the skeletons and carcasses, but before they could fly away, they were wiped out by the sword lights. Orthodox sword skill. Qin Mu immediately stopped and looked at the horse carriage in front. The sword skill which the bodyguard beside the horse carriage used was an orthodox skill. He had seen similar sword skill from Li River Sword Sect, which was impressive. This kind of sword skill required many swords to be refined into a sword pellet, and was very powerful when facing foes. It could also be arranged into a sword formation. Of course, those who could execute sword pellets were all experts because sword pellet was simply too heavy. To be able to use vital chi to make sword pellets soar into the sky, the person's cultivation must be matchlessly strong. The bodyguard beside the horse carriage was that strong, and the person in the horse carriage should be pretty remarkable. In the distance, that senior Uncle Chow suddenly felt his corpse beetles completely died in an instant and was astonished. He didn't continue forward and stood at the treetop to gaze from afar. The horse carriage of Lizhou Prefecture Magistrate. His expression changed hugely and urgently turned back to leave. "The magistrate of Lizhou Prefecture is a ruthless person and I'm no match. I shall retreat first." He immediately flashed away and vanished without a trace. Bodyguard Sure on horseback reported to the person in the carriage, "My lord, corpse immortal cult has retreated." The woman in the carriage said, "Call the youth over." "Yes." Bodyguard Sure got off the horse and bowed. "This young master, there's an invitation from my lord." Qin Mu came forward to the side of the horse carriage. The curtain of the horse carriage was lifted up and the woman inside revealed her side face. It was a beautiful woman with rosy cheeks and red lips. Turning her face over to size up Qin Mu, looking at his bright and neat clothes, she thought that he must be from a rich family and asked, "This young master, where are you from?" Being neither humble nor arrogant, Qin Mu replied in neither servile nor overbearing way, "I'm from Dike River County City." The woman asked, "Has Dike River County City already fallen into enemy hands and taken over by corpse immortal cult?" Qin Mu nodded his head and exclaimed in admiration, "Big sister sure is intelligent." Big sister? After being the magistrate of Lizhou Prefecture for so many years, it's still the first time someone has addressed me as big sister. The woman didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She called bodyguard Sure over and ordered, "Hand down an order to counties like Tiger Sun and Carefree Peace to prepare their troops to head to Dike River." Bodyguard Sure acknowledged and immediately left. The woman looked at Qin Mu and said, "Now that corpse immortal cult from Xiangxi has taken over Dike River County City, it would most likely be a disaster for the people there. You are also considered something of an oddity to be able to escape. I see that your clothes are pretty luxurious, so you should be from a rich family. What are your plans?" She had a gaze of pity. It was obvious that she felt now that Dike River County City was taken over by Corpse Immortal Cult, there won't be anyone who could survive in the city. Since Qin Mu was from Dike River County, his family would have most likely died in Dike River County, and there was no way for them to come out alive. That's why she would ask if Qin Mu had any plans. Qin Mu hesitated for a moment before answering, "I plan to go to the capital." The woman nodded her head and said, "It's also good to go to the capital. Our Lizhou Prefecture is also going to deploy our troops to Dike River County. With the chaos from the war, there would be bandits arising. This is not a safe place to be. Do you have any travel permit to go to the capital city?" Qin Mu stared blankly and shook his head. The woman muttered to herself irresolutely and said, "I'm Yuan Chuyu, the magistrate of Lizhou Prefecture. An armed rebellion happened in Dike River County under my rule, and this is my fault. It's natural you wouldn't have a travel permit when you had to escape from Dike River County City in a panic. I reckon Dike River County Magistrate must have also died in the armed rebellion. Bodyguard Chu, prepare my writing materials." The bodyguard at her side acknowledged and immediately retrieved writing materials, sending them into the carriage. Raising her brush, the woman wrote some sentences on the documents with her beautiful handwriting. She then asked again, "What is your name?" Qin Mu told her his name promptly. The magistrate, Yuan Chiyu, wrote down Citizen of Lizhou Prefecture Qin Mu and stamped it with her official seal. When the ink was dry, she passed the document out of the carriage and got someone to pass it to Qin Mu. "This is your travel permit, a document to clear the customs. With this travel permit, you can enter all the big cities you pass by on the way, and no one will give you any trouble." Magistrate Yuan Chiyu placed down her curtain and her voice came from inside. "There's no need for you to miss your family. There's nothing worth reminiscing left in Dike River County. Go to the capital city quickly. My elder brother Yuan Chiyun is an official there. When you reach the capital city, say that I have recommended you. I hope that I can still see you again." "Thank you, big sister." Qin Mu bowed and went down the official road. Yuan Chuyu sighed. "A pitiable boy, ruined and orphaned at such a young age. I'm afraid he's the only one left alive in Dike River County. This big sister Chuyu sure is nice." Qin Mu kept the travel permit document properly and thought to himself, "Now if I get interrogated when I reach the capital city, I can say I'm a citizen of Lizhou Prefecture. No one will know I'm from Great Ruins. Now that I stayed up all night, I should go rest at Tiger Sun County." Qin Mu slept in an inn in Tiger Sun County until evening when he was rudely awakened by the commotions outside. He could hear the inn owner saying, "No idea where these beetles have come from. They rush in from all over the place and they can't be killed or chased out. This is the red beetle. Officer, can you take a look to see if they are harmful?" Qin Mu's heart leaped and hurriedly got up. He woke up the little fox and packed his baggage. The inn owner was still talking about the matter regarding the bugs with the officer below. However, the officer was only a martial arts practitioner and knew nothing about this kind of bugs. There are many bugs of this kind in the city. They weren't around earlier. It must be the upcoming war which caused this bug infestation. Just trample these bugs to death. They can't be crushed or be burned to death. Even when I watered them with boiling water, they were still leaping and frisking about. One of them even went into a guest's mouth, and he couldn't even get it out by vomiting. Qin Mu left a great abundance coin on the table and pushed open the window. Hu Linger executed her spells to summon a demon wind and Qin Mu jumped out, stepping on the demon wind as he traveled away. At this moment he could see the red corpse beetles flying scattered in the sky above Tiger Sun County. Qin Mu flicked his fingers repeatedly and every flick was like a thunder bursting forth. The corpse beetles nearby him dropped to the ground before they could even see him. Why is Corpse Immortal Cult so persistent like a ghost? We just killed their cult leader's son. Is there a need for them to pursue us relentlessly? Hu Linger ranted angrily. Qin Mu landed on the ground and quickly sprinted away. He also bought a few trays of steam buns and just took the whole bamboo steamer along with him. Just as the owner was about to shout theft, a great abundance coin came flying onto the table of his stall, making him can't help feeling overjoyed. Qin Mu stuffed buns into his mouth as he quickly ran out of the city. Hu Linger jumped onto his shoulder and grabbed a piping hot bun, yelping repeatedly from the heat of the hot bun. She tossed it around in her paws. Enduring the heat, she took a bite and stuck her tongue out from scalding it. The human and the fox quickly finished the buns. When Qin Mu looked back and didn't see any red corpse beetles following over, he gave a sigh of relief. Hu Linger tunneled into the backpack and took out the Eternal Peace's geographic map. Qin Mu opened up the geographic map and checked it. He then raised his head and took a look at the surroundings. After he determined his location, he immediately increased his speed and rushed towards the capital city. Meanwhile, in Tiger Sun County City, many of the red corpse beetles couldn't find Qin Mu and flew out of the city. Outside the county's city, Senior Uncle Chow sat on top of Flat Sun Mountain and called back his corpse beetles with a slight frown. Yet at this moment, he saw a single-arm elder walking over, and when the elder passed by him, he stepped on one of his corpse beetle with a squash. Senior Uncle Chow was about to spew vulgarities at him when he suddenly came to a realization. My corpse's beetles are incomparably durable, so how can they be squashed to death so easily? This single-arm geezer is an expert, and it's best not to provoke him. When the elder walked far away, Senior Uncle Chow identified the directions and thought to himself, there are no signs of him nearby, and since the way here has been blocked by me, this brat has only east, west and north to escape from. My flying zombies have already reached City West and City East, and no traces of him could be seen there. In that case, he must have gone up north. He immediately moved and headed north. After a short distance, Senior Uncle Chow met the single-arm elder again. He looked at the hollow sleeve of the elder, who walked slowly and steadily towards the north. Senior Uncle Chow had no intention to take heed of him. Some of his corpse beetles formed a red cloud and carried him into the air, while the rest flew into the forest to search for any traces that Qin Mu might have left behind. Squash, squash. The single-arm elder crushed another 2 corpse beetles, and Senior Uncle Chow raised his eyebrows while holding back his anger. The swarm of corpse beetles slowly descended, but they didn't land on the ground, keeping the distance of a yard away from the ground and 2 yards away from the elder. Senior Uncle Chow bowed and greeted. This elder, these corpse beetles are raised by me. It's fine if you squashed one to death, but why did you have to squash 2 more of them? The single-arm elder stopped and replied, I thought they were ownerless bugs that were flying all around, so they were raised by you. Excuse me, excuse me. Senior Uncle Chow smiled. One who does not know is not guilty. Elder, please be more careful next time. Squash. The single-arm elder raised his feet and crushed another bug to death. Senior Uncle Chow's expression instantly changed. The single-arm elder immediately moved back and said, I didn't do it on purpose. Squash. Another few corpse beetles flew under his feet for no reason and were crushed into red-colored juice. Senior Uncle Chow sneered, and flying zombies came out from the forest and surrounded the single-arm elder. Senior Uncle Chow asked with a grim expression, Elder, are you here to toy with me? Purposely crushing the corpse beetles I've raised. Can it be that you're bullying us, corpse immortal cult? The single-arm elder immediately explained. So you are an expert from corpse immortal cult. Don't be misunderstood. Your bugs had made their way under my feet by themselves. You can't blame me. Senior Uncle Chow didn't know the depth of his cultivation and was slightly afraid. His expression eased and forced himself to say, Since it's not on purpose, let's leave it at that. As he was about to leave, he heard another squash. Senior Uncle Chow flew into fury, and his fear grew into guts. With a thought in his mind, the flying zombies pounced on the elder. His flying zombies were different from He Yin's. He Yin was merely just an entry disciple of Corpse Immortal Cult, who had just cultivated to 6 Directions realm and cultivated his divine arts. Whereas he was a figure of the older generation in Corpse Immortal Cult with the cultivation of 7 Stars realm. His flying zombies had long been refined into copper-armored corpses which had copper tendons and iron bones. They were all packed with astonishing power. Furthermore, he had refined quite a number of corpses, and with so many copper-armored corpses pouncing on the single-arm elder, It was naturally very easy to get him. Before those flying zombies could pounce on that elder, a resonating name of Buddha sounded out and the aura of Buddha erupted out. Senior Uncle Chow's blood ran cold and could only feel a Buddha standing in front of him. He couldn't help getting frightened out of his soul and knelt down on the ground at once to kowtow deeply. "Spare my life." Meanwhile, the flying zombies were shown by the Buddha's aura, and they fell flat onto the ground. The connections between him and his zombies were completely cut off. They were instantly enlightened by the single-arm elder and could never harm people anymore. "Stand up." The single-arm elder gave him a look and walked away. "Anyone can make mistakes. Forgive them when possible. I shan't kill you, but I wish you could spare people if it's possible to let them off." Senior Uncle Chow raised his head and looked at his surroundings. He let out a sigh of relief and thought to himself, "Luckily I'm smart. If trained properly, any skill would be able to save lives, for example, kneeling when you can't win." He got up and composed himself with a pained expression on his face. "These flying zombies cost countless years of my blood and sweat to create. Never would I expect all of them to be destroyed. Who is that single-arm elder? He's really powerful. He even didn't attack and just shone once with his aura to destroy my precious. However, when I catch that brat and take away that first-ranking high official's treasure sword, everything would be worth it." Qin Mu rapidly sprinted into the forest and suddenly stopped. He bent over and plucked a small grass that had a flower with 3 purple petals. Hu Linger was bewildered. "Young Master Mu, what flower is this?" "This is Earth Origin grass. It has a scent that human and beast cannot smell." Qin Mu carefully plucked the small purple flower. He threw away the flower and kept the leaves and rhizome. He continued to wander around the forest and search for another few herbs which were common herbs that could be seen in the forest. However, the scent of Earth Origin grass was abnormally fragrant to insects. Yet this grass has a poison which is not toxic to humans but deadly to insects. Therefore it is called the bane of 100 insects. These other herbs that I have picked don't have other uses other than to multiply the scent and toxicity of Earth Origin grass by 100 times. He quickly rushed forward. As he was running, his vital chi burst forth and propped the few herbs in the air. Using vital chi as a cauldron, he refined the medicine in the air. Flames burst forth in his other hand and roasted the herbs. At the same time, black tortoise vital chi was used to moisturize the herbs to prevent them from getting burnt. Before he crossed the call, Qin Mu had finished refining the medicinal energy of these herbs. Removing the medicinal dregs, his hands interlocked each other and instantly some liquid that was like clear oil appeared in the middle of his palms. Qin Mu looked at the surroundings and found a clear spring in a call nearby and went over to wash his hands. He then exerted force and rushed away. Not long later, a red cloud came flying over in the sky which was omnipresent. It was the red corpse beetles of Senior Uncle Chow. These red corpse beetles followed Qin Mu's trails and immediately caught up to Qin Mu. Suddenly the corpse beetles couldn't control themselves and flew down to the clear spring in the call. Senior Uncle Chow, who was controlling the corpse beetle swarm from behind, was startled and rushed over at once. Looking at the red color bugs that lay dead around the whole mountain and wilderness, he felt his heart turning cold. The corpse beetles that he had painstakingly raised had all died completely. To be able to poison his corpse beetles all in one go, this ability made him tremble with fear. Furthermore, the most crucial thing was, Qin Mu, who had now gone far away, smiled and told the little fox hiding in his backpack, "Corpse beetle is also a type of poison and is a great poison. The red corpse beetles are even more poisonous. The poison oil that I had just refined has no effect on humans, but if eaten by the red corpse beetles, it would merge with the toxicity of the red corpse beetles and turn into another poison which is even more terrifying. As long as one touches the poison, their flesh and blood will start to rot and their body would be paralyzed. They wouldn't be able to move and can only look at themselves rotting away." Hu Linger jumped in shock and cried out, "Young master, will the strong practitioner from Corpse Immortal cult be poisoned? I see that his cultivation is quite high." Qin Mu said faintly, "That would depend if he would touch those corpse beetles or not." Looking at the sky, he gently said, "This toxic will detox itself. When the sun shines on it, the toxicity will break down and become weaker and weaker. After getting exposed to the scorching sun for an hour, the toxicity will be gone. However, in the next hour, Whoever touches it dies. At the call, Senior Uncle Chow's body trembled and he suddenly sneered. Luckily I still have more corpse beetles and the beetle queen is still here. At this moment, the corpse beetles on his body climbed out frantically and flew towards the poisonous spring in the kernel. Even the beetle queen also flew out. Senior Uncle Chow gave a cry of alarm and immediately grabbed at the beetle queen, but the flying speed of the beetle queen was extremely fast. It had already come to the spring and drank the spring water. Senior Uncle Chow grabbed the beetle queen from behind and was about to give a sigh of relief when his body suddenly turned stiff. The skin on his palm rapidly rotted and this rot was spreading up his arm. His muscles started to fall off from his arm and dropped to the ground, rapidly turning into pus. He could see his arm rotting but he couldn't feel any pain. He wanted to chop off his arm but his consciousness seemed to be separated from his body and couldn't control his body. Gritting his teeth, Senior Uncle Chow mustered all his strength to lift his other arm. Suddenly his body lost balance and collapsed onto the floor. With his face on the floor, there were several more corpses of the dead corpse beetles under his face. Grandpa Apothecary was right. He told me if I can't win, I'll just have to use poison. The cowherd boy from disabled elderly village sighed ruefully in the distance. 5 days later, Qin Mu came to River Tomb County. River Tomb County was much more flourishing than the other county cities he had seen on his way here. River Tomb County was a city that was practically built entirely on the river. This river was Gold River and not Surging River. Therefore River Tomb was also known as Gold Tomb. The torrential waters of Gold River were vast and mighty like the sea. Originally River Tomb County was built on an island on the river, but as more ships came and went, it flourished and became overpopulated. Therefore a large-scale construction was carried out to build a city. At that time, appointed as the magistrate of River Tomb County was the imperial preceptor today. At that time he was already a strong practitioner brimming with talent. He showed extraordinary abilities and gathered numerous skilled workmen and countless of divine arts practitioners to lay down deep stone pillars into the river. Every stone pillar was 300 yards long, and there was a total of 3,800 stone pillars. The top of the stone pillar was 100 yards above the water level, which allowed large ships to sail below, and also floods to flow past. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor used huge stones to pave the road along with the skilled workmen and divine arts practitioners, and used divine arts to stabilize and construct River Tomb County. This was a very large project, and it took tens of thousands of divine arts practitioners tiring for 10 years to build this new city. Below the new city was a few impluvia for illumination, and when the rain got heavy, the impluvia could be used to carry away the rainwater. There were also some docks that were constructed below the city to facilitate the traffic. Beside the city were also harbors, big and small, for the ships coming here to load and unload goods. This place was simply bustling, therefore it was also called Small Capital. The scholar officials at that time criticized the construction of the new city and accused the River Tomb County magistrate of plotting a rebellion by building a river tomb city to intercept the dragon's vein of the empire. They petitioned the emperor to execute him. They also said that the River Tomb magistrate built a dragon's head on Gold River, having errant intentions. After Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor accomplished this spectacular feat, he was summoned to the capital and many people thought the emperor was going to execute him. Never would they thought that Crown Prince Yanfeng admired him extremely, and after Crown Prince Yanfeng ascended to the throne with his great skills and strategies, he promoted Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor repeatedly, and made him into the Imperial Preceptor not long later. Qin Mu had also heard these interesting stories from the helmsman, and didn't know how much of it was true. However, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's capability and Emperor Yanfeng's wisdom eyes made him admire the two people. On board of the same ship were some scholars from River Tomb County. Some were poor scholars from poor families, and there were also scholars from rich families. Qin Mu made some inquiries and found out that most of these people were from elementary school and college. They were all students from the same school. Qin Mu was astonished and inquired about the elementary school and college in River Tomb County. Only then did he know about the reason for it. Elementary school and college were set up by Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, and had been extended to the whole country. Imperial Preceptor told Emperor Yanfeng, "The lives at 8 years old, from aristocrats to the common people, will have to enter elementary school to learn Daoyin etiquette, sense of propriety, rights in music, archery, literacy, cultivation to build their foundation. The talents of the students should be observed first, then the students should be taught in accordance with their aptitude. Those students who have awoken their spirit embryos and broken the walls of their divine treasures are going to be chosen to enter college. Imperial Preceptor then told Emperor Yanfeng, when they are at age of 15, the eldest son and the heirs of the Son of Heaven as well as the heirs of the dukes, high-ranking officials, senior officials, imperial scholars will attend college with the talented common people. They will learn divine arts, sword skills, how to rectify one's mind, how to cultivate oneself, how to govern the people. They will be proficient in the knowledge of divine arts at all times. At that time, all of the college's scholars will be the students of your majesty, and there will be no need to rely on sections. As time goes by, the danger of sects would be got rid of. Imperial Preceptor also said, once one graduate from college, he can enter Imperial College. Imperial College's scholars will learn the paths of being officials and generals, and study the paths and govern the whole world. That way the 4 seas will attain peace and your majesty will be free of worries. Qin Mu sighed ruefully. With eternal peace Imperial Preceptor's way of scholarship, how can a country not be prosperous? The living space of the sects in Eternal Peace Empire was squeezed out by the elementary school and college. Without a living space, it's no wonder the sects would rebel. On the boat, Qin Mu took out the computational cannons he had bought at River Tomb City. Studying it attentively, he wrote down his calculation methods with a charcoal pencil on the paper. Suddenly a scholar with a plump physique asked, Brother Qin is also going to the capital city to take the imperial examinations? Qin Mu nodded his head and smiled. That's right. I plan to go to the capital city to take a gamble for my future. Brother Wei is also going there for the imperial examinations. The scholar with the plump physique called Wei Yong nodded his head and smiled. To pass the entrance exam with scholarly honors and enter Imperial College to study is my long-cherished wish. Another scholar laughed. Brother Wei, it's not that easy to enter the Empire's Imperial College. Your age is merely just over 14 and you are still an elementary scholar. You won't be able to enter Imperial College. Wei Yong sneered. Are Imperial College's scholars that amazing? They might not even beat me and Brother Qin. Most of the scholars laughed out loudly. Qin Mu also revealed a smile. Many of the scholars on board the same ship with them were all going to the capital city to take the imperial examinations. They all wanted to enter the Empire's Imperial College. What the College of River Tomb taught were all basic sword skills and spells which were not widespread. Whereas in Imperial College of the capital city, it had millions of books and had everything they wanted. Almost all the techniques and divine arts of all the sects in Eternal Peace Empire were gathered here. It could be said to be the Empire's highest learning institute. It was extremely difficult to enter Imperial College. The college's scholars from all around the country had all fought fiercely just to enter. As for elementary school scholars, they mostly planned to enter the capital city to enter the college there. It was even more difficult for an elementary school scholar to enter Imperial College. Unless they were especially outstanding, then would they have a chance to enter. Every year, the number of elementary school scholars that can pass the entrance exams and enter Imperial College was close to none. The helmsman steered the ship towards the shore. Qin Mu noticed that this ship used a strange furnace. There were flames in the furnace, and as long as medicinal stones were thrown in, the spirit energy in the medicinal stones would be able to spin the gears on top of the furnace. The gears were then linked to a water wheel which pushed the large ship forward like a water vehicle. The helmsman only needed to be in charge of the rudder and control the directions. Qin Mu clicked his tongue in wonder. Where would he be able to see such strange contraptions in great ruins? Not long later, the large ship finally sailed to the bank. Disembarking with the rest of the scholars, Qin Mu followed them and came to the vehicles and horses market after walking a short distance. Qin Mu looked around and became even more curious. He could see land traveling boats, flying vehicles, cranes and land dragons for rent and sale. There were also some ships that were ready and waiting to set sail. Smokes were billowing out from these ships, and there were even flames mixed in with the smoke. Brother Qin, over here. Wei Yong stood at the bottom of a ship and waved at him. The ship lowered its gangway, and there were some scholars going up the ship. Qin Mu walked over and raised his head to look at the ship, giving off an astonished expression. Wei Yong had been familiar with him from the beginning and smiled. Land traveling boats are too bumpy. Flying vehicles are too expensive, cranes and land dragons have to brave the wind and rain. It's still the most comfortable to take a ship. It's just that the speed is slightly slower. However, it's still quite early before the selections, therefore, let's take a ship to the capital city. Qinmu agreed with him and asked, "How much is it?" Wei Yong took out a jar of wine and smiled. "You're more well-dressed than me and you still care about the price? Sister Fox, I bought some wine for you." Hu Linger surprised and delighted. She stood up like a human and thanked him earnestly before taking the wine jar. Qinmu came to the bosun's location and paid the ship's fare. 10 great abundance coins were needed to travel from River Tomb to the capital city. It wasn't considered expensive seeing how Qinmu was used to being extravagant. He had totally no idea how much a great abundance coin was worth and only knew that he had always given a great abundance coin for all his lodging and food to the other parties, making them grinning from ear to ear. The 2 people and 1 fox boarded the ship and not long later, the ship was already fully occupied. There were apothecaries and their boys starting the furnaces. The medicinal energy was turned into magic power to be supplied to the sculptures of the bronze beasts at the aft of the ship. The huge mouth of the bronze beasts immediately spewed out intense flames and the ship gradually rose into the air. The ship slowly adjusted its direction in midair and unfurled its sails as it drove out of River Tomb, heading towards north. On the ship, the guests all had their own rooms and food service was also provided on board. They would just have to spend the next few days on board the ship. Qinmu stood on the ship and looked down at the ship got higher and higher up. With its increasing speed, River Tomb City below had become smaller and smaller, but he could still see flying vehicles, flying beasts, flying ships and etc. flying out to other cities from time to time. Meanwhile, ships were bustling on the river. Eternal Peace Shore is a magical place. Qinmu exclaimed in admiration to himself. Ling Yuxiu said that the skills and divine arts of Eternal Peace were progressing rapidly and now I see it. It really seems to be the case. He could see that Eternal Peace Empire was incorporating skills and divine arts into every corner of the everyday life. The basic needs of ordinary people were slowly changing, and this was very similar to the path of the saint described in great educational heavenly devil scriptures. The path of the saint was for the everyday use of common people. Eternal Peace Empire had done very well. He suddenly had a weird thought. Could Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor also be part of my heavenly devil cult? There were scholars practicing their martial arts on board, and their cultivations were all remarkable. However, what made Qinmu astonished was that they were all cultivating the same type of martial arts, spells and sword skills. Qinmu was puzzled. Won't it be very easy for the opponent to catch your weakness by cultivating the same types of spells and sword skills? From his point of view, martial arts practitioners might be a realm for one to build up their foundation, but being erudite was also a foundation. When too many scholars cultivated the same martial art, the same spells, the same sword skills, it would be very easy for others to catch their weakness. This kind of martial arts practitioners, I can fight 10 with one hand. Qinmu shook his head silently and continued to study computational cannons. There was a total of 10 books of computational cannons which Eternal Peace Empire had printed out. He had already finished reading them and sorted out most of the calculation methods on the paper. When night came, Qinmu would come to the deck and raised his head to look at the astrological aspect. Using his calculation methods to deduce, he would then record his calculations on the paper. After flying for 4 days, the ship was gradually getting closer to the capital city. It was the first time going to the capital city for most of the scholars, and it was hard for them to conceal the excitement in their heart. They all leaned out the side of the ship to look outside. Suddenly a violent tremor traveled over and the ship tilted to one side. Some scholars didn't have a stable grip and fell off the ship. These few people didn't cultivate divine arts that could make them fly, so they let off a long and blood-curdling scream which went on for a long time. Because the ship had flown too high up, it would still take a while for them to fall to the ground. Qinmu frowned. Both of his legs were like 2 spears nailed to the ship as he grabbed the drunk Hu Linger with one hand, and the also drunk Wei Yong with the other in case they fall off as well. At this moment, a loud laughter came from outside the ship and an unimaginably huge python opened its huge mouth which was laid with barbs, biting down onto the aft of the ship. Everyone on the ship was startled. The aft of the ship was broken off by that huge python. The scholars who were standing at the aft of the ship fell off from the ship, and there were even some scholars swallowed by the huge python. There was also a person standing on the flat head of the huge python. The person wore a flowery gown and had applied rouge and powder, looking very alluring. However, it was an alluring man who was looking excitedly at all the flustered people on the ship. Whoosh! The huge python's thick and solid body coiled over, and actually managed to coil around the several levels of the ship. The floors of these levels creaked from the bind, and stupefied scholars were all around the ship. Even the boatmen were frightened silly. "Brother Wei Yong, can you fly?" Qin Mu suddenly asked. Wei Yong had yet returned to his senses. "What?" Qin Mu raised his hands and threw this short fatty off the ship. Wei Yong's terrified screams came from below. "I can't fly up." Qin Mu leaped and jumped off the ship. Hu Linger, who was dead drunk, was now as awake as an owl at night. The instant Qin Mu jumped off, the little fox executed spell and a cusp of gust lifted Qin Mu up. Qin Mu stepped on the cusp of gust and whizzed down to stretch his hand to grab Wei Yong. Wei Yong, who had not yet recovered from his shock, looked down and gave another scream. "Stop screaming!" Qin Mu exerted force and sprinted frantically. In the sky, the large ship creaked and shattered pieces of the ship came crashing down. Qin Mu continuously dodged in the sky and avoided huge woods that came whizzing past as he rushed towards the distance. Wei Yong turned back to have a look, and his gaze turned dull. The ship had been crushed into pieces. The huge snake coiled around the ship and desperately tightened the ship and split it into two halves. The scholars on the ship jumped off the ship. There were some divine arts practitioners who had learned flying skills, therefore, they controlled their spirit weapons to assist them to fly. There were some who had never learned that before, and could only flail their limbs helplessly as they were crashing towards the ground. "Long Jiaonan, are you trying to rebel?" The bosun of this ship erupted into anger and turned into a flaming giant as he attacked that alluring man with his extremely overbearing divine art. However, the ship couldn't support the battle of the two experts, and the core elixir room of the ship was shattered from the binding of the huge snake. The apothecaries and boys inside immediately rushed out and jumped off the ship. At the same time, the huge snake spewed out a cloud of poison smoke onto the bosun's face. The flaming giant immediately extinguished and fell down facing upwards. "We're done for." Wei Yong's face turned pale white. Dragon Rider sect has rebelled. The person which has raised this huge worm is Long Jiaonan, the young sect master of Dragon Rider sect. He's a well-known villain. Qin Mu dragged him along with great effort and rushed toward the ground. There were foothills below them where they could hide their traces and not be discovered by the strong practitioners of Dragon Rider sect. After some time, they finally landed on the ground. Hu Linger dispelled her spell and was about to say something when a blood-curdling scream came from above. A scholar crashed through the dense tree crowns and splattered into pieces in front of them, his brain and liver scattering everywhere. Thud! Another dull thud came from not far away. Thud, thud, thud. It seemed like it was raining in this foothill as the scholars fell from the sky and died horribly. Wei Yong's expression turned ashen as he shivered uncontrollably. Qin Mu's ears twitched and suddenly pulled him to sprint forward. Behind them, a loud crash sounded out as half of the ship came crashing down and destroyed a forest. The trees that were hit shot out in all directions, looking extremely terrifying. The huge body of that ship slid 300 yards and finally came to a stop before crushing Qin Mu, who was sprinting. Qin Mu continued to rush forward and an earth-shattering bang came from the ship. It was the furnace exploding, and the surging waves of air smacked the two people and one fox away. Qin Mu landed on the ground and let go of Wei Yong while whispering to him, "Let us move quickly. Soon there will be experts from Dragon Rider sect to check if there are any surviving people." Wei Yong had just recovered from his shock and immediately sprinted forward. "What happens if they see surviving people?" Hu Linger rolled her eyes at him and looked slightly drunk. It was obvious she had sneakily drunk some wine. "Fatty Wei, what do you think?" Wei Yong gave a cold shiver. Dragon Rider sect sure is extremely daring. They actually dared to attack the ship which carried scholars going to take the imperial examinations so close to the capital city. When Imperial Preceptor's injuries are healed, he will definitely not let Dragon Rider sect go. "You really think Imperial Preceptor is injured?" Qin Mu shook his head. "In my opinion, Imperial Preceptor was not injured at all. He is purposely luring the snakes out of the holes, to lure out all the powers that are opposing him in Eternal Peace Empire and capture them all in one go. Isn't Dragon Rider sect now lured out by him? Wei Yong was stunned and cried out. What you mean is impossible. I've heard that there are no less than 20 regions that are rebelling. They have overtaken the cities and caused countless deaths among the common people, and there are many bandits running amok. How could Imperial Preceptor condone such a thing? Qinmu replied. These are naturally tactics. If he wasn't hurt, how could he lure these rebels and traitors out? Therefore he is injured. Suffering a defeat at Great Ruins and being assassinated on his way back, he was gravely injured. No matter if it was his reputation or power had suffered a great decrease. Who would give up on such a great chance? He said resolutely. From what I see, this should be a conspiracy of Imperial Preceptor, and he will definitely not quell the rebellion until all the rebels and traitors have unmasked their true nature. Wei Yong still felt hard to accept it and muttered, but many people will die. However, the danger lurking around Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor would be completely got rid of, am I right? Qinmu gave a look at Wei Yong. This fatty was extraordinarily nimble and could actually follow his footsteps. However, it seemed like he didn't have any comprehension to the wind and couldn't step the cusp of gusts to fly. Qinmu continued. Once he completely wipes out the lurking dangers, who would dare to mess around with him when he goes out to battle with his troops then? Besides, if Imperial Preceptor manages to capture all his enemies at one go, who would dare to object if he wants to ascend to the throne? Wei Yong shivered a few times uncontrollably and looked at Qinmu as if he was a monster. Brother Qin, you're about the same age as me, right? How can you think of so many intrigues and conspiracy? Little fox, is he actually an old cunning fox spirit who had cultivated himself into a human? Hu Linger got excited and said, Fatty Wei, you also noticed it? I have long suspected that young master is a male fox that had turned intelligent. Wei Yong replied, Don't call me Fatty Wei. The Wei family of River Tomb is also considered a reputable family. If word of this gets out, it's going to be embarrassing. Little Fox then said, Then I shall call you Fatty Yong. Wei Yong fell silent for a moment before replying with an astringent voice, It better for you to call me Fatty Wei, at least it sounds nicer. Suddenly Qinmu asked, Brother Wei, what's your cultivation? I have broken through the 5 elements wall and awakened my 5 elements divine treasure. However, my cultivation doesn't seem too much higher than yours. Wei Yong was bewildered. What's your cultivation? Spirit Embryo Realm. Qinmu's vital chi swept and pulled out his pig slaughtering knife as he said, Brother Wei, you deal with 2 and I'll deal with 2. Wei Yong didn't understand what he meant. Suddenly 4 huge snakes slithered from the forest in front of them. Accompanying the huge snakes were melodious flute sounds that were light and quick. It was like a charming village maiden playing with a green snake in the bushes, the tune going sometimes high and sometimes low. The people blowing the flutes should be the disciples of Dragon Rider sect. Looking towards the source of the sound, Qinmu couldn't see any experts from Dragon Rider sect. Therefore they should have hidden themselves. Dragon Rider sect was originally the sect of Great Flourish County that was near the capital city. They raised snakes for a living. Since they could raise huge snakes, therefore they called themselves Dragon Rider. This sect had been subdued by Imperial Preceptor and had always known their place. Even among the strange beasts kept in the military, there were huge snakes raised by the disciples of Dragon Rider sect. The sound of the flute was clear and melodious as the huge snakes slithered along with the flute's music. Brother Qin, Dragon Rider sect's weapon may look like the huge snakes, but it's actually the flute sound which is used to control the huge snake's attacks. Wei Yong was about to tell Qinmu about the offensive method of Dragon Rider sect, but Qinmu had already rushed out. Without a choice, Wei Yong could only take a step and rushed forward as well. Suddenly the flute sounds became compressed and fleeting. The speed of those huge red-crowned snakes suddenly grew faster as they pounced on the 2 people. The instant Qinmu met with the first huge snake, knife light suddenly flashed and burst forth like a huge silver ball. Midnight battle across stormy cities. In a split second before the huge red-crowned snake could pounce on him, a silver light went around it. This silver light rushed from the snake's head to the snake's tail, and when the silver light vanished, all that was left was a huge snake skeleton without any flesh or blood left. At the same time, Hu Linger controlled her curved wind blades to cleave another huge snake. However, the flute's sound controlled the huge snake to suck in with its huge mouth and sucked in the curved wind blades, following which, the snake wanted to spew out poisonous smoke. Qin Mu put his fingers together and thrust forward, which caused Junior Protector Sword to stab into the huge snake's eyes. Flicking his fingers upwards, Junior Protector Sword instantly broke out from the snake's head. On the other side, Wei Yong pushed forward and his cultivation was dense. With a sword case on his back, he controlled flying swords to stab the huge snakes. The sword case was also a spirit weapon, however. Its sharpness was inferior to Qin Mu's Junior Protector Sword and pig slaughtering knife. Wei Yong moved around nimbly under the attacks of the two snakes, and managed to create lots of sword wounds on the huge snake, but he couldn't find a chance to kill the two huge snakes. Even though his cultivation was dense, his techniques in battle were far inferior to Qin Mu, and his moves were also moves from the school. He didn't have the ability to kill with one hit. Suddenly Hu Linger skipped and entered the forest like a wisp of smoke, while Qin Mu also rushed into the forest from the other direction. Wei Yong gave out a cry of alarm as he wanted to rush over as well, but he didn't have the chance to while being tied down by the two huge snakes. At this moment, the flute sound suddenly stopped, and without the command of the flute sound, the two huge snakes blanked out. Wei Yong took this opportunity and killed the two snakes, then rushed into the forest at once. When in the forest, he heard little foxes sound coming over. "Fatty Wei, over here!" Wei Yong immediately ran over and saw Qin Mu along with the little fox. They were beside a towering tree which was bleeding, but Wei Yong didn't see anyone. Taking a closer look, he saw that the one that was bleeding wasn't the tree but a man. The attire of this man was exactly the same as the tree bark, and even his face was painted with the grain of the tree bark. This person had dug a hole in the huge tree, which size was just right to hide in it. Without taking a closer look, it was impossible to see him. "He's a disciple of Dragon Rider sect." Wei Yong's heart skipped a beat and said, "Brother Qin, the disciples of Dragon Rider sect usually move in a group. What you mean is..." Qin Mu also had a change in expression as he looked towards the deeper parts of the forest. The trees were verdant and lush over there, and then over 100 figures walked out from the tree trunks, their bodies covered with grains of the tree bark. The sound of the flute sounded out, and countless of huge snakes came slithering from the back of the forest. The snakes spread out everywhere over the hills and dales, and the red crowns of these huge snakes were like flowers swaying gently in the wind. The disciples of Dragon Rider sect had already kept watch at the front, waiting to clean up the people that had slipped through the net. The snakes spreading out everywhere over the hills and dales slithered forward. The scene caused their hairs to stand on end. Wei Yong's expression turned pale white and muttered, "What's the capital city doing?" All kinds of demons and monsters had come running out. Where are the guards of the capital city? At this moment, a booming sound suddenly came from the capital city. Qin Mu's heart moved slightly and immediately grabbed Hu Linger and placed her into his backpack and whispered, "Fall back." Wei Yong fell back at once, and just as the two of them retreated 300 yards away, the snakes suddenly began to stir restlessly as if they had suffered an extreme shock and slithered frantically over to them. Other than the snakes, the disciples of Dragon Rider sect also got into a panic and jumped on the heads of the snakes. The huge snakes slithered like they were flying as they pounced on Qin Mu and his friends. Back to back. Qin Mu cried out, and Wei Yong understood and immediately came back to back with him. Taking down the sword case on his back, slamming it heavily onto the ground, Wei Yong closed both his hands, and each hand had two fingers joined together as he clutched his sword secrets. His sword case opened up and swords rose up one after another with the tips of the swords facing down. With a sword hum, the swords separated and circled around Qin Mu and him, the sword's tips spinning rapidly outwards. Qin Mu was astonished. This move from Wei Yong wasn't taught by the school, and was much more intricate compared to the sword skills cultivated by the scholars in the school. It should be a sword skill passed down through his family. Wei Yong had said that the Wei family was a reputable family in River Tomb, and it seemed that he wasn't bragging about it. The snakes swarmed over, and Qin Mu's vital qi burst forth. Golden rings appeared both in front and behind him, and sword lights came shooting out towards the huge snakes and the disciples on the snakes' heads that were swarming over. This was a skill that he had learned in the ancient temples of Border Dragon City. It was like divine arts, yet it was not divine arts. Its attack power was not weak, and once the huge snakes were injured by the golden sword light, they would avoid them and slither away to one side. Meanwhile, the disciples of Dragon Rider sect were disrupted by his sword light and had no time to attack back. These people and snakes didn't seem to be attacking them and looked more like they were trying to escape. However, there were simply too many snakes that were swarming over, and it was also hard for Qin Mu to avoid all the huge snakes. These huge snakes swarmed over like flood and were about to inundate the both of them. Wei Yong cried out loudly, and his flying sword revolved around the both of them rapidly to slice at the snakes that were swarming over. With flames and sparks fizzing, huge snake scales flew around from getting sliced, and there were even huge snakes that had their flesh sliced open, looking very miserable. The pressure on Wei Yong suddenly increased, making it hard for him to withstand it. Qin Mu immediately changed his move, and with his palms intersecting each other, his vital qi was like a huge raging river as it turned into currents and crashed into the huge snakes' bodies. In his backpack, Hu Linger executed spells and raised tornadoes which swept up the huge snakes. The pressure on the two people and one fox grew larger and larger, and at this moment the booming sound grew closer. Huge birds with black feathers and red crests sprinted among the mountain like they were flying. These huge birds were like moving hills, and their beaks were several yards in length. Walking in the forest were like walking in the bushes to them. Their sharp claws shattered the mountain rocks, and their huge beaks pecked on the huge snakes, swinging them in all directions. On the back, the birds stood 5 to 6 soldiers with quivers on their waist and longbows on their hands. They continuously shot at Dragon Rider sect's disciples who got swung away, and every disciple who got swung off the snake's head would instantly become a hornet's nest. With the quivers at their waists, they didn't need to stretch behind to retrieve their arrows, and only need to lower their hands to pick up another arrow to shoot. Therefore, their shooting speed was extremely fast. The huge birds charged around violently and dispersed the snakes. As their huge bird claws came down, they could grab onto the huge snakes, and the sharp claws would stab deeply into the huge snakes' bodies and tear the red-crowned snakes apart. The flock of birds chased the snakes until they reached Qin Mu and his friends. Wei Yong exclaimed in delight, "It's the bow and arrow cavalry of the capital city's guards." The flock of birds soon reached in front of them as they sprinted over. When the few archers saw Qin Mu and Wei Yong, they were startled and pulled the reins at once to make the huge black feathers and red crest birds avoid them. They then shouted loudly, "There are still scholars alive. Everyone be careful not to crash into the scholars." Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Huge flags along with the flagpoles came shooting down from the back of the birds and stuck in front of Qin Mu. Splendid abilities! The few soldiers on the back of the bird exclaimed in admiration when they saw Qin Mu's palm skills and Wei Yong's sword skills. To be able to survive from the ambush of Dragon Rider sect's snakes, these scholars indeed have some abilities. When the flocks of birds charging behind saw these flags, they immediately detoured to both sides and avoided Qin Mu and the rest. After some time, the flock of birds and the snakes all left far away. Qin Mu let out a sigh of relief, and Wei Yong, who was behind him, put his flying swords back into his sword case. Slumping down on the ground, he panted heavily. Qin Mu looked back and saw huge beasts fighting fiercely in the forest. The huge snake was like a dragon turning and twisting in the woods with terrifying impetus. The young sect master of Dragon Rider sect Long Jiaonan must have met with the bow and arrow cavalry and ended up fighting. A moment later, the follow-up troops from the capital city slaughtered their way over. The ones who were here this time were the sword guards. As the sword pellets rose into the sky, their radiance was blinding, and 10 of thousands of flying swords shot downwards, causing great casualties to Dragon Rider sect. Long Jiaonan brought her huge snake and retreated with countless of smaller-sized snakes which slithered onto the huge snake's body. Many of the Dragon Rider sect's disciples rose into the sky and also landed on the huge snake's body. The huge snake actually spat out a demon cloud with thunder and lightning, and rose into the air and rushed off. The sword guards chased after it. They soon left further and further away. "Are there still scholars that have survived?" a voice asked in the forest. "Yes, I saw 2 scholars just now." "There are only 2 scholars?" The voice fell silent. "Where's the ship from?" "Should be from Rivertomb County, the hometown of Imperial Preceptor." "Damn it." Dragon Rider sect attacking the scholar's ship from Rivertomb County was clearly to bring down the Imperial Preceptor's prestige. "It's also our fault. We didn't guard it poorly. Follow me, let's go and meet the 2 scholars." A moment later, a few huge birds sprinted rapidly over to Qin Mu and his companions. A high-ranking military officer clad in armor jumped off the bird's back to look at Qin Mu and Wei Yong. With his booming voice he asked, "Two scholars, do you know how many people were on board?" Qin Mu didn't count precisely and hesitated for a moment. "About 300 to 500 people." The corners of the military officer's eyes twitched. 300 to 500 scholars. Wei Yong immediately said, "General, there are many divine arts practitioners among the scholars that know how to fly. I saw many people flying out from the ship. They should have survived." The general shook his head. None of them survived. They were eaten by the flying snakes of Dragon Rider sect in midair. "You are the only two left." Wei Yong jumped in shock and looked towards Qin Mu. If it wasn't Qin Mu who had been quick-witted and threw him off the ship, he would have died on the ship. After throwing him down the ship, Qin Mu had brought him to step on the wind to rush down to the forest below. He was still bewildered at why Qin Mu hadn't continued sprinting in the air where it would be faster. Never would he think that all the scholars who were flying in the air were dead and only the two of them were left alive. "Brother Qin, my life is given by you. From today onwards, you're my blood brother." Hu Linger was bewildered. "Fatty Wei, was it your parents who had given you life?" Wei Yong immediately said, "Like a second parent. Little fox, don't always create trouble." I was about to say my heartfelt words, and now I've completely forgotten after getting interrupted by you. The military officer was astonished. "Your surname is Wei? The Wei of River Tomb's Wei family?" Wei Yong nodded. "I'm indeed from River Tomb's Wei family." The military officer gave a sigh of relief and said, "You're really the family member of Duke Wei. Young Master Wei, Duke will definitely be happy to know that you're fine. This little brother's surname is Qin? Could it be the Qin of capital city's Qin family?" Qin Mu shook his head and smiled. "My Qin is not the Qin of capital city's Qin family. I'm from Lizhou Prefecture," the military officer said. "So you are from Lizhou Prefecture. May both scholars try to get to the capital city soon. Dragon Rider sect has a great power and there might still be remnants. Anybody there? Send these two scholars to the capital city." A huge bird came over and the soldier on the back of the bird smiled. "May both scholars come up the bird." Qin Mu and Wei Yong leaped onto the bird's back. They saw that the back of the bird was very wide, and there was even a wide deck secured onto the bird's back for people to stand on. This black feather and red crest bird strode and rushed towards the capital city. The military officer let out another sigh of relief and muttered to himself, "Duke Wei is a first-ranking high official of the imperial family. Lucky his family member is fine or else my official position would be at stake." The other youth with the surname Qin is not from Qin family? His clothing looks pretty good and his power is also extraordinary. Only powerful families can train out such a remarkable child. Could it be that Lizhou Prefecture has another Qin family? An hour later, the black feather and red crest had sprinted its way to the capital city. Qin Mu looked forward and his heart wavered slightly. He had seen River Tomb City before, and was extremely shocked, yet the capital city in front of him brought him a greater shock than River Tomb City. River Tomb City was built on Gold River, and was 100 yards above the river surface, having a magnificent sight. Whereas this capital city was built on mountain ranges which were like huge dragons. Furthermore, it wasn't a single mountain range but 9 mountain ranges. 9 mountain ranges which were like dragons crawling on the flatlands gathered at the location of the capital city. The place where 9 dragons converged, and where the dragons' heads gathered was the capital city. This kind of majestic grandeur had already far surpassed River Tomb City, which was built on Gold River. It was no wonder Emperor Yanfeng made little of the saying that River Tomb City intercepted the dragon vein by building it on top of the dragon's head. The capital city was originally sovereign of 9 dragons, so why did he have to be concerned with the River Tomb City of Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, which suppressed just 1 dragon? With 9 dragons surrounding and protecting the capital city, there were still 4 barracks 10 miles away from the capital city. Each barrack was as huge as a city, and 7 miles away from the barracks were 8 towns. Even though they were towns, they could be compared to cities. These 8 towns were built beside a huge river, which was the second big river in Eternal Peace Empire called Mud River. The water and land transportation there was extremely convenient and fast. The first big river was Surging River, which came from Great Ruins. Even though it was the second big river, Mud River was called the Dragon's Vein of Eternal Peace, the Orthodox Dragon's Vein. whereas Gold River was just rumored to be a dragon's vein, and many people in all levels of society didn't approve of that. Qin gazed into the distance. The capital city where 9 dragons converged had an extraordinary atmosphere, which was as expected from the place where the Son of Heaven ruled the world from. There's still troops hidden in the mountains. Qin gazed at the 9 dragons' mountain ranges and could faintly see the chi of troops, which made him cry out in astonishment. The few soldiers on the back of the bird were also astonished as they looked towards him. One of them asked, "Little brother, know people in the army? You even know that there are troops hidden in the mountains?" Qin didn't reply. The reason he could see a magnificent army with thousands of men and horses hidden among the 9 dragons' mountain ranges was because of his heaven's eyes. The 9 heaven's eyes awakening skill, which was imparted to him by blind, had the art to gaze at chi. What was called gazing at chi was to observe the fate. Stationing troops at such a large scale in a place like the capital city to use the chi of the troops to suppress the fate of the empire, it naturally couldn't escape his eyes. The bow and arrow cavalry sent them to the capital city's gate before taking their leave. Qin and Wei Yong had their travel permits checked at the city gate and entered the capital city. As the city below the foot of the Son of Heaven, it would naturally be extremely flourishing. Even though Qin had been to River Tomb City and the flourishing River Tomb City had broadened his horizons, the capital city was an entirely different scenery. It was bustling here, but there weren't merchants haggling over every cent. There was wealth accumulation, but much more than this, there was cultural heritage. The houses and buildings were atmospheric, and the sculpting techniques of the stone lions along the roadside were also very exquisite. The rhyming couplets on the doors of big families were also distinctive. All the families here placed door gods on their external doors, and this also gave him a wonderful feeling, as if the door gods could really come alive to defend against demons and monsters. One tiny clue reveals the general trend. Checking a leaf and one would know if it's spring or autumn. Observing a drop of water and one would know how blue the sea was. As Qin observed his surroundings, he became fully aware of how formidable the empire was. Village chief and the others once told him that Eternal Peace Empire was a sect that was disguised as a country. Only now did he know how powerful this sect was. Does Brother Qin have a place to stay? Wei Yong invited him. If not, there's no harm coming to the Duke's Manor to stay for a few days. We can wait until the Imperial College opens its doors and go over to take the examinations. Qin hesitated for a moment and shook his head. I have old friends from my hometown in the city and I'm going to live with them. Brother Wei Yong, let's part our ways here. Wei Yong could only drop the subject and said, when you've settled down, you can order someone to notify me at the Duke's Manor. Qin smiled. Definitely. That's right, Brother Wei Yong. Where is the cat house at? Wei Yong had a weird expression. I didn't know before that Brother Qin is still a sophisticated person that likes this kind of taste. The biggest cat house in the capital city is at Flower Alley. Walk all the way to the end of Flowery Phoenix Street and take a right turn. After that you will see Flower Alley after another 3 streets. The best cat house in Flower Alley is called Rain Listening Pavilion. Do not ask me how I know, I've never been there. Take care of your body. Qin was bewildered. What kind of taste is going to the cat house? And what has it to do with the body? The two of them parted their ways. Qin brought Hu Linger forward and walked towards in Flowery Phoenix Street. This is not a cat house. In Flower Alley, Qin looked at the buildings on both sides and was bewildered. The buildings were the crimson-red color with lanterns hanging at the doors, but there were no signs of cats. Little brother, come up and play. Some little sisters waved to him from the top of the building. Young Master Mu, do you know them? Hu Linger was bewildered. They're shouting so enthusiastically. It was the same when I went to Border Dragon City. There were some sisters who were very cordial and I wasn't used to it. Qin walked forward and looked at the signboards on his way. The flower alley was very deep and had a lot of twists and turns. Once they were deep inside, it wasn't as bustling as before. The maidens here were more reserved as they hugged their peepas and leaned against the windows. With their faces half concealed by peepas, they gently played peepas in a clear and serene tone. As they continued to walk in, the soft music came from inside. Qin opened the door to take a look and saw light muslins fluttering about. A few maidens were running to and fro among the light muslins while some maidens were tuning their instruments. Walking further in, There were some girls upstairs practicing their songs and dances. Peals of laughter like loud and clear bells sounded out from time to time, charming and lovely. Reaching the alley here, there were not as many passers-by as before. There would be 1 or 2 men coming out from the courtyard from time to time. They seemed like the master as they had graceful and warm women tidying their clothes and sending them off reluctantly. However, the men who walked out from inside would always cover their faces when they saw Qin Mu, as if they were afraid of being recognized. Qin Mu was bewildered. It's nothing shameful to walk out of their own house, so why are they covering their faces? The people in the city are really strange. He walked deeply into Flower Alley and saw a building which wrote Rain Listening Pavilion. The door of this building was tightly locked, however. The courtyard looked deep and was very silent. Qin Mu came forward and knocked on the door. A moment later he heard pattering footsteps sounding out with a girl's gentle voice. "I'm coming, I'm coming." The sound of door bolt opening came from inside and a slit was opened at the door. A girl poked her head out behind the door and asked curiously when she saw Qin Mu. "Guest, who are you looking for?" Qin Mu asked politely. "Is Fu Qingyun around?" That girl pulled the door half open and smiled. "May I ask for young master's name? It's easier for me to inform as well. You can tell her that my surname is Qin." The girl closed the door and her footsteps gradually went far away. She must have gone to inform. After some time, the door opened once again and a familiar face was revealed. It was the cat house hall master Fu Qingyun, and when she saw Qin Mu, she couldn't help being surprised and delighted. "Young master is finally here. Quick, quick, come inside. Sisters, what are you waiting for? Serve the tea, young master is here." "Young master is here?" The girls' voices came from inside and they sounded very melodious. Their tinkling voices sounded like small birds chirping on a tree that had just sprouted in spring. Blue, green, red and purple dresses fluttered in front of Qin Mu's eyes as the maidens from Rain Listening Pavilion came out and welcomed him, dazzling his eyes. The maidens of Rain Listening Pavilion all had their distinguishing features. Some of them were as warm as soft jade, some were as cold as ice frost, some were delicate and charming, and some were passionate like fire. It could be said that they were like a mix of flowers that gradually charmed the eyes of the person looking at them. Fu Qingyun immediately said, "Move away, all move away. Young master has just arrived after a long and tiring journey, so don't pester young master. Why are you not preparing the tea?" These girls dispersed like a bunch of butterflies. Some went to scoop up spring water, some went to wash the teacups, and some went to boil the water. That relieved Qin Mu so much, and he appeared relaxed. Fu Qingyun led him into the main room and said, "These girls lack discipline. Young master, don't blame them. It's dangerous outside. The war brought confusion and disorder, and perhaps things unforeseen have happened to young master on your way over here." Qin Mu smiled and said, "I indeed met some troubles, but I was lucky to get through daunting experiences without mishap. You can inform the higher-ups in the cult to inform Patriarch." Fu Qingyun smiled. Patriarch has been waiting quite some time for young master. Actually, Patriarch had already told us that if we met young master, we should tell young master to meet him. Some of the girls came up with tea and sneaked a few glances at Qin Mu while giggling. Qin Mu gave a smile in return and asked bewilderedly, "Sister Yuner, where do I go find him?" That girl heard Qin Mu refer to Fu Qingyun as Sister Yuner and giggled again. Fu Qingyun gave her a stare and ousted her out before smiling. "Of course, Imperial College. Young master, drink tea." Imperial College? Qin Mu was astonished and forgot to drink the tea in the teacup he had raised. Wasn't Imperial College the place the scholars go to for learning? Why did he have to go to Imperial College to meet the young patriarch? Young master have no idea? Fu Qingyun smiled. Patriarch is the Empire's Grand Chancellor of Imperial College, a lower third-ranking official that in charge of Imperial College, so naturally he would stay at Imperial College. Even though the Imperial Scholars of Imperial College has the honorific of being students of the Son of Heaven, but they are actually students of Patriarch. Qin Mu's heart was strongly shaken. All the Imperial Scholars in Imperial College were students of the young Patriarch? Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor and Emperor Yanfeng actually dared to hand this official position to the Patriarch of Heavenly Devil Cult? Weren't they worried that he got too powerful? Fu Qingyun seemed to be able to see his thoughts and said, "The human world is like a game to Patriarch. No one knows his true identity. Actually, he's an old man, virtue and prestige, an otherworldly expert whose reputation had stirred the world long before the time of the first emperor and had always been mysterious. Even Imperial Preceptor had also consulted him for advice and the path. It was also through eternal peace Imperial Preceptor's vouch that he could become the Empire's Grand Chancellor of Imperial College.